The weakest wolf in the kingdom stood before the most powerful alpha alive, and the entire court waited for her to beg. Instead, Lyra Vale spoke 3 words that shattered centuries of law. "I reject you." The room went silent. Alphas didn't get rejected, especially not by nobodies, especially not by her. But Lyra had just done the impossible, and what came next would either kill her or reshape their entire world. If you want to see how a rejected outcast becomes the one who changes everything, stay until the end. Drop a comment with your city, hit that like button, and let's dive into this story. The morning Kyle Draven arrived at the border settlement, the sky looked like it was bleeding. Lyra Vale stood at the edge of the crowd, trying to make herself invisible. Not that it took much effort. She'd been perfecting that skill her entire life. In a world where strength meant everything, where your wolf determined your worth, she was the kind of person people looked through rather than at. The settlement of Ashwick wasn't much. A collection of rough stone buildings pressed against the kingdom's edge, where the fertile lands gave way to barren rock and the kind of cold that got into your bones and stayed there. It was where they sent people who didn't fit anywhere else. The weak, the broken, the ones nobody wanted. Lyra fit right in. "Move," someone grunted, shoving past her. She stumbled but caught herself against a wooden post. Nobody apologized, nobody even noticed. She was used to it. The crowd pressed forward, everyone craning to see the procession coming up the main road. Kyle Draven, Alpha of the Northern Territories, was visiting Ashwick for the first time in living memory. The rumors had been flying for weeks. Inspection, they said. Integration, others whispered. Some thought he was here to shut the settlement down entirely, finally get rid of this embarrassment on his border. Lyra didn't care much either way. Whatever happened, it wouldn't affect her. Things had a way of not affecting her. She existed in the spaces between events, in the gaps where important things happened to important people. "They say he's never lost a challenge," the woman next to her breathed, eyes wide. "Never even been injured in one." "I heard he killed a rogue pack single-handedly last winter," someone else added. "My cousin saw him shift once. Said his wolf is the size of a small house." Lyra tuned them out. She'd heard enough stories about powerful alphas to last a lifetime. They were all the same, strong, ruthless, entitled. Men who took what they wanted and crushed anyone who got in their way. The procession appeared around the bend. Even from a distance, she could feel it. Power. The kind that made the air heavy, that made her wolf, small and weak as it was, want to tuck its tail and run. The crowd went quiet, that particular silence that comes from prey recognizing a predator. Kyle Draven rode at the front, and Lyra hated that the rumors hadn't been exaggerated. He sat his horse like he owned the world, like everything he looked at was his by right. Tall, broad-shouldered, with dark hair and the kind of face that would have been handsome if it wasn't so cold. He wore his authority like a second skin. Behind him came his guard, 20 wolves, all of them bigger and stronger than anyone in Ashwick. The message was clear. We could end you without breaking a sweat. The settlement's appointed leader, Marcus, stepped forward. He was a beta, the strongest wolf they had, and even he looked diminished next to Kyle. "Alpha Draven," Marcus said, bowing his head in submission. "Ashwick welcomes you." Kale dismounted in one smooth motion. "Marcus." His voice carried across the square without him raising it. Authority, bred into every syllable. "I trust preparations have been made." "Of course, Alpha. The hall is ready for inspection, and later." Kale's eyes swept across the crowd, and Lyra felt herself shrinking back even though his gaze hadn't landed on her yet. "First, I want to see what I'm working with. Line them up." Marcus hesitated. "Alpha? Everyone with a wolf. Line them up. I want to see what passes for strength in this place." It wasn't a request. The crowd shuffled into something resembling a line, the stronger wolves pushing to the front, the weaker ones, people like Lyra, ending up at the back. She considered slipping away entirely, but guards were already moving through the crowd, making sure everyone complied. Kale walked down the line slowly, studying each person like they were livestock. Some he nodded at, others he dismissed with barely a glance. When he reached the weaker wolves, his expression grew cold. "These are Omegas," he said to Marcus. "Why are they still here?" Marcus shifted uncomfortably. "We don't have the resources to—" "Resources?" Kale's voice could have cut stone. "They consume resources. Food, space, protection. What do they contribute?" They work, Alpha. Farming, building, cooking. Any human could do that work. Kale turned back to the line. A wolf pack needs strength. These are parasites. The words hit Lyra like a physical blow. She'd been called weak before, useless, a burden. But parasite? That was new. That was worse. And then it happened. Kale's eyes met hers. The world tilted. It wasn't gradual, wasn't gentle. It was like being struck by lightning and drowned in the ocean at the same time. Every nerve in her body lit up, screaming one word over and over, mate. No, this wasn't possible. But her wolf, her weak, pathetic wolf that had never been good for anything, surged inside her with a certainty that terrified her. Mine. The bond snapped into place like a chain, like fate, like a prison sentence. And she could see in Kale's face that he felt it too. For just a moment, his mask cracked. His eyes widened, his breath caught, and something almost like shock crossed his features. The bond was pulling at him the same way it was pulling at her, trying to drag them together, insisting this was right, this was meant to be. The crowd had gone silent again, but this time it was different. People were looking between them, beginning to understand what was happening. Marcus spoke first, his voice careful. Alpha is something... No! Kale's voice cracked like a whip. His face had gone hard again, harder than before. Absolutely not. Lyra felt the words like a knife between her ribs. He stepped closer to her, and the bond screamed at her to reach for him, to close the distance, to accept what was meant to be. She forced herself to stay still. What's your name? He demanded. Lyra. Her voice came out smaller than she wanted. Lyra Vale. Lyra Vale. He said it like it tasted bad. Do you understand what just happened? She nodded. Speech seemed beyond her. Then you understand, he continued, his voice carrying across the silent square. What I'm about to do. The bond was still there, still pulling, but now it felt like drowning, like being caught in a current too strong to fight. Kale turned to address the entire crowd. By the laws of our kind, I am required to acknowledge when the bond forms. So I acknowledge it. He turned back to Lyra, and his eyes were arctic. And I reject it. I reject you, Lyra Vale. I reject this bond, this connection, this fate. You are not my mate. You will never be my mate. I deny you now and forever before all these witnesses. The formal words of rejection. Spoken before the pack, they couldn't be taken back. They were final. The bond didn't snap. That would have been merciful. Instead, it started to tear, slowly, like something alive was dying inside her chest. The pain was incredible. People had told her that rejection felt like dying. They hadn't been wrong. She couldn't breathe, couldn't think. The world was spinning, and the only thing anchoring her was the agony radiating from where the bond was being ripped apart. The crowd was murmuring now, some shocked, some pitying, some satisfied. Of course this would happen. Of course the universe would be cruel enough to give her a mate, just so she could know what it felt like to lose one. Marcus stepped forward. Alpha, perhaps we should... This discussion is over, Kale said. The rejection is witnessed and binding. There's nothing more to say. He was already turning away, dismissing her, moving on like she was nothing, like she'd never been anything. And something inside Lyra, something she didn't know she had, caught fire. The pain was still there, still tearing her apart, but underneath it was something else, something hot and fierce and absolutely done with being treated like garbage. Wait! Her voice wasn't loud, but it cut through the murmurs. Kyle stopped. What did you say? He didn't turn around. Lyra straightened up. Her body was shaking. Her wolf was howling in agony, but she forced the words out anyway. I said wait. You don't get to just walk away. Now he turned. The look on his face would have sent anyone else running. Excuse me? The rejection has to be mutual. The words came from somewhere deep, somewhere she didn't know existed. By law. You rejected me? Fine. But I have to accept that rejection for it to be complete. The crowd's murmur turned into actual conversation. People were pulling out phones, checking sources, arguing. Because she was right. The law was old, barely ever invoked because who would refuse to accept a rejection? But it was there. Kyle's expression could have melted steel. You're going to accept it, obviously. No, Lyra said, and the word felt like power. I'm not. You can't be serious. I reject you too. The words came easier now. Kael Draven, I reject you as my mate. I reject this bond. I deny you, now and forever, before all these witnesses. The crowd erupted, because this had never happened. An alpha being rejected by an omega. A nobody throwing rejection back in the face of one of the most powerful wolves in the kingdom. Kael looked like she'd slapped him. Do you understand what you've just done? Probably not entirely, Lyra admitted. Her whole body was shaking now, adrenaline and terror, and something that might have been exhilaration. But I know I'm done being treated like I'm nothing. You want to reject me? Fine, but you don't get to do it and keep your pride intact. We're both rejected now. We're both alone. Fair's fair. Someone in the crowd laughed, a short, shocked bark of sound that was immediately cut off. Marcus was pulling out his phone, frantically scrolling through legal texts. His face had gone pale. Alpha, she's right. The dual rejection creates a legal situation that I can read, Kael snapped. But his eyes were still on Lyra, and there was something new in them now. Not respect, nothing that kind, but acknowledgement. She'd surprised him. She'd made him actually see her. She'd made a very powerful enemy. This isn't over, he said quietly. I figured. He stepped closer, close enough that she could feel the heat of him, could smell earth and pine and something wild. The bond was still there, still tearing itself apart, but now it was confused. Mutual rejection wasn't supposed to happen. The magic didn't know what to do. You think you're clever, Kael said, his voice low enough that only she could hear. You think you've won something, but all you've done is make yourself a target. I was already nothing, Lyra replied, surprised by how steady her voice was. How much worse can it get? His laugh was sharp and completely humorless. You're about to find out. He turned to Marcus. I want a full report on the legal implications of this by morning, and I want her confined until we sort out what happens next. Confined? Lyra felt the first real flutter of fear. You can't. I'm the alpha of the Northern Territories. I can do whatever I want. He looked at her one more time, and his eyes were empty. You should have just accepted the rejection, Lyra Vale. You should have taken your pain and gone home and lived your small life. But you wanted to make a point. Fine. Let's see how much it costs you. Two guards moved forward, taking her by the arms. Not rough, but not gentle either. The crowd parted as they led her away. Some people looked sympathetic. Others looked angry. How dare she embarrass an alpha like that? Most just looked uncomfortable, like they'd witnessed something that was going to have consequences nobody could predict. They put her in one of the old storage buildings at the edge of the settlement. Not quite a cell, but close enough. One room, one window, too small to climb through, one door with a guard outside. When they left her alone, the shaking started for real. What had she done? Lyra sank down against the wall, wrapping her arms around herself. The bond was still there, still dying slowly, and the pain was getting worse. But underneath it was something else, something she'd never felt before. She'd stood up for herself. She'd looked one of the most powerful alphas in the kingdom in the eye and said no. She'd done the impossible, and now she was probably going to pay for it for the rest of her life, however long that turned out to be. Outside, she could hear raised voices, arguments. The settlement was in chaos, and it was her fault. Her wolf was quiet now, exhausted from the bond trauma. But there was something in its silence that felt less like weakness and more like waiting. Hours passed. The sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of red and gold. Beautiful for the end of everything. The door opened. Lyra looked up, expecting guards or Marcus, or maybe Kael coming to tell her exactly how thoroughly she'd destroyed her life. Instead, it was Emma, one of the other Omegas from the settlement. She was carrying a tray of food and her face was tight with worry. 5 minutes, the guard said from outside. That's all you get. Emma set the tray down and sat next to Lyra. Are you insane? She whispered. Probably. Do you know what you've done? The legal mess this creates? Marcus has been on calls with the council for hours. They're saying... She stopped, looking scared. Saying what? That the dual rejection creates a challenge situation. That because you both rejected each other in front of witnesses, The bond can't just die. It has to be resolved. Lyra's stomach dropped. Resolved how? Nobody's sure. The law hasn't been invoked in centuries. But they're talking about trials, or challenges, or… Emma grabbed her hand. Lyra, they're talking about exile, about stripping you of pack status entirely. I barely have pack status to begin with. You don't understand. No pack status means no protection, no rights. You'd be rogue, and rogues can be killed on sight in most territories. You'd have nowhere to go. The food on the tray, bread, cheese, some kind of stew, suddenly looked nauseating. There has to be another option, Lyra said, but her voice was hollow. There is. Emma's grip tightened. Accept the rejection. Publicly. Apologize. Beg his forgiveness. Maybe he'll be merciful. Lyra thought about it. Really thought about it. Going back out there, getting on her knees, telling Kyle Draven that he was right, that she was nothing, that she accepted her place as less than. Living the rest of her life knowing she'd had one moment of courage and she'd given it up. No, she said quietly. Lyra, I can't. She looked at Emma, this woman who'd been kind to her when nobody else was, who was risking the guard's anger just to bring her food. I've spent my entire life being invisible, being nothing. Today, for just a few minutes, I was somebody. I mattered. I can't take that back. Emma's eyes filled with tears. Then they're going to destroy you. Probably. They sat in silence for a moment. Outside, the settlement was quieting down as night fell. Normal life resuming, even in the middle of chaos. Time's up, the guard called. Emma stood, wiping her eyes. I'll try to visit again. Bring you news. Thank you. At the door, Emma paused. For what it's worth. What you did today. It was brave. Stupid, but brave. Then she was gone. Lyra picked at the food, forcing herself to eat even though everything tasted like ash. She needed her strength. Whatever came next, she'd need every bit of strength she had. Night fell completely. Through the small window, she could see stars appearing, cold and distant. The bond in her chest was quieter now, the pain settling into a dull, constant ache, like a wound that would never quite heal. She must have dozed off eventually, because the next thing she knew, it was dawn and someone was unlocking the door. Marcus entered, looking like he hadn't slept. Behind him were two guards and a woman Lyra didn't recognize. Severe face, expensive clothes, the bearing of someone important. Lyra Vale, the woman said. My name is Counselor Vera. I'm here to inform you of the legal ruling regarding your situation. Lyra stood, trying not to show how terrified she was. Vera pulled out a tablet, reading from it in a flat official voice. The dual rejection between yourself and Alpha Kale Draven has created an unprecedented legal situation. After consultation with Council Archives and historical precedent, we've determined the following. The bond cannot be allowed to remain in limbo. It must be either completed or completely severed. How? There are three options. First, one of you accepts the other's rejection, allowing the bond to dissolve naturally. Second, both of you accept a ceremonial severing performed by a council elder. Third, she paused, and something that might have been discomfort crossed her face. Third, you engage in a formal challenge, with the victor determining the final status of the bond. A challenge. Omega versus Alpha, Lyra versus Kyle. It would be a slaughter. Alpha Draven has chosen the third option, Vera continued. He has formally challenged you to ritual combat, to take place in 3 days' time. The room spun. That's insane. I can't fight him. I can't fight any Alpha. Then you should choose one of the other options. And if I don't? If I don't choose any of them? Vera's expression was genuinely sympathetic now. Then the council will be forced to declare you rogue and exile you from all protected territories. You'll have 24 hours to leave the kingdom entirely. There it was. Accept humiliation, accept a ceremonial severing that amounted to the same thing, or accept certain death in the arena, or leave everything and everyone she'd ever known. I need time to think, Lyra said. You have until noon tomorrow to give your answer. Vera nodded to Marcus and turned to leave. Wait, Lyra called. Why is he doing this? Why the challenge? He could just let me sever the bond and be done with it. Vera looked back and her eyes were cold. Because you embarrassed him. You made him look weak in front of witnesses. He's not doing this for the bond, girl. He's doing it to make an example of you, to show everyone what happens when you defy an alpha. Then she was gone, and Lyra was alone with Marcus. The settlement leader looked at her for a long moment. You really stepped in it this time. I know. What are you going to do? Lyra walked to the window, looking out at the settlement. Her prison, her home, the only place she'd ever been. Beyond it, the wasteland stretched to the horizon. Beyond that, territories where she'd be killed on sight. I don't know, she admitted. What would you do? Marcus was quiet. Then, honestly, I'd probably choose exile. At least you'd be alive. Alive and alone, alive and running forever. Better than dead. Was it, though? Lyra wasn't sure anymore. The day passed in a blur. Emma came back with more food, more frightened whispers about what people were saying. The whole kingdom had heard about it now. The Omega who rejected an Alpha. Some were calling her brave. Most were calling her insane. Kyle had come. She'd half expected him to gloat or threaten or try one more time to make her back down. But there was nothing. Just silence and waiting. That night, lying on the rough cot they'd provided, Lyra stared at the ceiling and tried to figure out who she was. A nobody, a weakling, a burden. That's what she'd always been told, but today, yesterday, now, she'd been something else. She'd been defiant, strong, brave, even if it was a stupid kind of bravery. Which one was real? Her wolf stirred inside her, still weak, still damaged from the bond trauma. But there was something in its movement that felt different, like it was waiting for her to decide something important. Dawn came too fast. Marcus arrived at mid-morning, his face grim. It's almost noon, Lyra. What's your answer? She'd been awake all night, thinking, weighing her options, trying to find a way out that didn't end with her destroyed. There wasn't one. But that was okay, because somewhere during the night she'd realized something. She'd already been destroyed. Her old life, her old self, the Lyra who accepted being nothing, that person was already gone. Killed the moment she opened her mouth and said, I reject you too. So what did she have to lose? Tell them, she said, her voice steady, that I choose the challenge. Marcus's eyes went wide. Lyra, that's suicide. Probably. You can't beat him. You can't beat any alpha. You're going to die. Maybe. She met his eyes. But I'm going to die as somebody who refused to back down. Somebody who looked power in the face and didn't blink. That's worth something, isn't it? Marcus stared at her like he'd never seen her before. Maybe he hadn't. Maybe nobody had. You're insane, he said finally. Yeah, Lyra agreed. I'm starting to think that might be my best quality. He left to deliver her answer. Through the window, she heard the news spread through the settlement. Shock, disbelief, and something that might have been respect. The Omega had chosen to fight. Everyone knew how it would end, but at least it would be interesting. That afternoon, they moved her to better quarters, some kind of formality about challenge participants being treated with respect. The room had an actual bed, a bathroom, even books on a shelf. It was still a prison. 3 days. She had 3 days to prepare for a fight she couldn't win. 3 days to live. Lyra sat on the bed and started to laugh. It wasn't happy laughter. It was the kind of laugh that comes when you realize you've thrown your life away for a principle and you're not even sure it was the right one. But she'd made her choice. Now she had to live with it, for however long that turned out to be. Outside, the sun was setting again, painting the sky in shades of blood and gold. The bond in her chest pulsed, weak but persistent, confused by the dual rejection and the challenge and everything that was happening. In 3 days, one way or another, it would be over. Lyra lay back on the bed and closed her eyes. 3 days. She'd better make them count. The first day of preparation, nobody came. Lyra spent the morning pacing her new quarters, waiting for someone to tell her what to do, how to train, how to even begin preparing for a fight against an alpha. By noon, she'd accepted that nobody was coming. Why would they? Everyone knew how this ended. She was already dead. They were just waiting for it to become official. Fine. She'd figure it out herself. The door wasn't locked, another formality of the challenge rules. Participants had freedom of movement until the fight. Lyra stepped out into the corridor, half expecting guards to stop her. Nobody did. The settlement felt different now. People moved out of her way, but not like before. Before they hadn't seen her, now they saw her and chose to avoid her anyway. It was somehow worse. She found the training yard empty except for some old equipment, a punching bag with the stuffing coming out, weights that had seen better days, a practice dummy so worn it barely had features left. Lyra approached the punching bag. She'd never trained formally. Omegas didn't get that privilege. But she'd watched others over the years, picked up bits and pieces. She threw a punch. Pain exploded across her knuckles. The bag barely moved. "You're doing it wrong." Lyra spun. A man leaned against the fence, maybe 30, with scars crossing his face and the build of someone who'd spent a lifetime fighting. She didn't recognize him. "Who are you?" "Name's Garrett. I'm with Draven's guard." He pushed off the fence, walking toward her. "Or I was. Until this morning." "Was?" "Got myself dismissed for suggesting this whole thing was a bad idea." He shrugged, like losing his position meant nothing. "Turns out alphas don't like being told they're making mistakes." Lyra's guard went up. "If you're here to mess with me, I'm here because I've seen a lot of stupid challenges in my time, and this one's the worst." Garrett stopped a few feet away, studying her. "You really think you can beat him?" "No." The honesty seemed to surprise him. "Then why accept?" "Because backing down felt worse than dying." She turned back to the bag. "Now, if you'll excuse me, I have 2 days to learn how to fight." 2 days won't make a difference, not the way you're going about it." "Then leave me alone to fail in peace." Instead, he stepped closer. "You're leading with your shoulder. That's your first problem. Second problem is you're telegraphing every move. Third problem is you're fighting like someone who's afraid to get hurt." He met her eyes. "You're going to get hurt. Might as well make it count." Something in his voice made her pause. "Why do you care?" "Because I've watched Kyle Draven crush people for 20 years and most of them deserved it. But you?" He shook his head. "You just didn't want to grovel. That shouldn't be a death sentence." "Pretty sure the law disagrees with you." "The law's screwed up." Garrett moved to the bag, demonstrating a proper stance. "You want to live through this?" "I can't promise that. But I can teach you how to make him work for it." Lyra looked at this stranger, this guard, who'd lost his position for speaking up. She didn't trust easily. Life had taught her better. But right now, he was the only option she had. "Okay," she said. "Teach me." They trained until dark. Garrett was brutal, direct, and completely unsympathetic when she fell or failed or wanted to quit. Every time she hit the ground, he told her to get up. Every time she complained, he reminded her that pain in training was better than death in the arena. By the time night fell, Lyra could barely move. Her knuckles were bleeding, her body was one giant bruise, and she'd discovered muscles she didn't know existed. "Better," Garrett said, which was probably the closest to praise he got. "You're still going to lose, but at least you won't look pathetic doing it." "Thanks. Really encouraging." "You want encouragement? Find a cheerleader. You want honesty? I'm your guy." He tossed her a water bottle. "Same time tomorrow?" Lyra nodded, too exhausted to speak. That night she dreamed of the fight. In her dreams, she was strong, fast, unstoppable. In her dreams, she won. She woke up to reality and pain in every joint. The second day, Emma visited in the morning, bringing food and news. "The whole kingdom's talking about it," she said, setting down a basket of bread and fruit. "There are betting pools. Most people think you'll last less than a minute." "Optimistic." "Some are saying 30 seconds. Emma sat beside her. "Lyra, it's not too late. You could still—" "I'm not backing down." Emma's face crumpled. "Then I'm going to watch you die." The words hung in the air between them. Lyra wanted to offer comfort, to promise it would be okay, but she'd never been good at lying. "Maybe," she said instead. "But maybe I'll surprise everyone." "How?" "You're an Omega. He's an Alpha, the strongest Alpha in the North. What could possibly change that?" Lyra didn't have an answer. She'd been asking herself the same question for 2 days. After Emma left, Lyra returned to training. Garrett pushed her harder than before, like he was trying to cram years of experience into hours. She learned to block, to dodge, to use her smaller size as an advantage. She learned that fighting wasn't about strength. It was about finding weaknesses and exploiting them. Every fighter has a tell, Garrett explained as they sparred. A habit, a pattern, something they do without thinking. Draven's is overconfidence. He's so used to winning, he doesn't guard properly in the first 30 seconds of a fight. He plays with his opponents. How does that help me? It gives you an opening, one chance to do real damage before he gets serious. Garrett's expression was grim. Make it count, because you won't get a second one. They trained through the afternoon. As the sun began to set, Lyra noticed people gathering at the edge of the yard, watching, whispering. Ignore them, Garrett said. Focus. But it was hard to ignore the stares, the judgment. Some faces showed pity. Others showed contempt. A few showed something that might have been hope, quickly hidden. When they finally stopped, Lyra was surprised to see Marcus approaching. Lyra, he said, his voice careful. We need to talk. Garrett stepped back, giving them space. Marcus waited until he was out of earshot before speaking. The council's been in session all day. There's been developments. Lyra's stomach dropped. What kind of developments? The challenge has drawn attention. A lot of attention. When word got out that an Omega was fighting an Alpha, people started digging into the law, into precedents. Marcus looked uncomfortable. They found something. Found what? A loophole. If you survive the challenge, not win, just survive for a set amount of time, you could claim elevation. Pack law says that any wolf who withstands an alpha challenge for more than 10 minutes without yielding can petition for status advancement. Lyra stared at him. That's insane. Nobody's going to let an Omega become not alpha, but beta, maybe, or pack enforcer. Some kind of recognized position. Marcus ran a hand through his hair. The council's panicking. They didn't think you'd last long enough for it to matter, but now they're worried you might actually make it 10 minutes. Based on what? I'm still an Omega. 10 minutes or 10 seconds, I'm going to lose. Maybe. But Garrett's been training you. People are noticing that you're getting better, faster. And Draven, he paused. Draven's getting angry. Really angry. He was supposed to crush you in seconds, make an example, move on. Now there's a chance this could actually affect his reputation. Good, Lyra said, surprised by the venom in her voice. No, not good. Marcus stepped closer, lowering his voice. Angry alphas make mistakes, but they also get vicious. If he thinks you're actually threatening his standing, he won't just beat you. He'll destroy you. Make it hurt. He was already going to do that. Not like this. Marcus's eyes were worried. I'm telling you this because you need to know what you're walking into. This isn't just a challenge anymore. It's political. The other packs are watching, the council's watching, everyone's watching. If you survive 10 minutes, you could change things. Really change things. Or I could just die. Yeah, that's still the most likely outcome. After Marcus left, Lyra sat in the darkening yard trying to process everything. 10 minutes. All she had to do was survive 10 minutes. Against an alpha who was now actively motivated to kill her as quickly as possible. Great. You heard? Garrett asked, returning with water. She nodded. Changes the game, he said. You're not fighting for pride anymore. You're fighting for actual stakes. I was always fighting for actual stakes. My life. No. Now you're fighting for possibility. For change. He sat beside her. That's dangerous. That's when people start caring about whether you win or lose. You think I can make it 10 minutes? Garrett was quiet for a long moment. Honestly, I don't know. But I know you're tougher than you look. And I know Draven's going to underestimate you, at least at first. Use that. That night, Lyra couldn't sleep. Her body ached from training, her mind raced with strategy, and the bond in her chest pulsed irregularly, like a dying heartbeat. She thought about the loophole, about what it would mean if she survived, about the possibility, slim, almost impossible, but still there, that she could actually change something. Dawn came too fast. The third day. The last day. Lyra woke before sunrise and went straight to the training yard. Garrett was already there. Couldn't sleep either? She asked. Haven't slept in 2 days. He tossed her practice gloves. One more session. Let's make it count. They fought until her muscles screamed, until she could barely stand, until every movement was automatic. Garrett didn't hold back, and neither did she. "Good," he said when they finally stopped. "You're ready, or as ready as you're going to be." That's not reassuring. It's not supposed to be. It's realistic. He pulled off his gloves. "Tonight's the challenge. You know what you need to do? Survive 10 minutes. No, survive the first 30 seconds. That's when he'll be careless. Get past that, and you've got a chance." "Maybe." Lyra nodded, trying to ignore the fear crawling up her spine. The morning passed in a blur. Emma came to help her prepare, bringing clean clothes and attempting conversation that kept dying in uncomfortable silences. Marcus stopped by to review the challenge rules, formal, binding, brutal in their simplicity. And then, mid-afternoon, the door opened and Counselor Vera entered. "Lyra Vale," she said. "I need to speak with you. Alone." Emma and Marcus exchanged glances but left. Vera waited until the door closed before speaking. "I'm here to make you an offer." "What kind of offer?" "The kind that saves your life." Vera pulled out a tablet showing her a legal document. "Accept this binding agreement to withdraw from the challenge, accept a ceremonial severing, and accept exile from the Northern Territories. In exchange, we'll provide you safe passage to the Western Kingdoms and enough money to start over." Lyra scanned the document. It was generous, actually. More than generous. Suspicious. Why? Because this challenge has become a problem. The attention it's drawing, the legal questions it's raising, it's destabilizing. Better for everyone if it just goes away. "Better for Kyle Draven, you mean?" Vera's expression didn't change. "Better for the system. You're smart enough to understand the difference. And if I refuse? Then you fight tonight, and you die tonight. Make no mistake about that." Vera leaned forward. "I've watched Alpha challenges for 30 years. I've never seen an Omega survive one. The law might say 10 minutes gives you elevation rights, but you won't make it 10 minutes. You'll be lucky to make it 2. Garrett thinks I have a chance. Garrett's been dismissed from service and is facing disciplinary action for interfering with council business. His opinion is irrelevant." Vera tapped the tablet. "This is your last chance to walk away with your life. Take it." Lyra looked at the document, at the promise of safety, of a future, of escape. It would be so easy to sign, to choose life over pride. She thought about the Omega she'd been 3 days ago, the invisible girl who accepted her place, who never caused trouble, who existed in the spaces between important things. That girl would have signed. "No," Lyra said. Vera's jaw tightened. "You're making a mistake." "Probably, but it's my mistake to make. The council won't forget this. Win or lose, and you will lose, you've made powerful enemies. I made a powerful enemy the moment I rejected Kale Draven. This doesn't change anything." Vera stood, tucking the tablet away. "Then I hope you're ready to face the consequences." After she left, Lyra sat in silence, wondering if she'd just signed her death warrant. Then again, she'd probably done that 3 days ago. This was just making it official. Emma returned, her face pale. "Did she offer you an out?" "Yeah." "And you turned it down?" "Yeah." Emma sat beside her, taking her hand. "You're either the bravest person I've ever met, or the stupidest. Can't it be both?" They sat together until the sun began to set, until the bells rang, signaling that the challenge was about to begin. The arena was packed. Lyra had expected a crowd, but this was something else. Hundreds of people, maybe thousands, packed into the old amphitheater at the edge of the settlement. Some had traveled from other territories just to watch. The betting pools Emma had mentioned were apparently legendary. They led her through a tunnel under the arena, the sound of the crowd growing louder with each step. Her escort was silent, professional. They probably thought she was walking to her execution. They were probably right. The tunnel opened onto the arena floor. The evening sun painted everything gold and red, like the sky itself was bleeding. The crowd noise hit her like a physical force, cheering, jeering, chanting. Across the arena, another tunnel opened. Kyle Draven stepped out. The crowd went insane. He looked like every nightmare she'd had over the past 3 days. Bigger than she remembered, moving with the confidence of someone who'd never lost a fight in his life. His eyes found her across the distance, and she saw no mercy there. No hesitation, just the cold promise of destruction. Counselor Vera stood in the center of the arena, her voice magically amplified. We are here to witness a formal challenge issued by Alpha Kale Draven and accepted by Lyra Vale. The challenge will continue until one party yields, is incapacitated, or dies. There are no other rules. There is no other mercy. The crowd roared approval. Fighters, approach. Lyra's legs felt like water, but she forced them to move. Kale met her in the center, standing so close she could feel the heat of his power. Last chance, he said, his voice too low for anyone else to hear. Yield now, and I'll make it quick. No. Then I hope you're ready for pain. Vera raised her hand. Begin on my mark. 3, 2, 1. The hand dropped. Kyle moved. Lyra had known he'd be fast, but knowing and experiencing were different things. He closed the distance in a heartbeat, his fist already swinging toward her face. 30 seconds. Garrett's voice in her head. He'll be careless for 30 seconds. Lyra dropped and rolled, feeling the air displacement as Kyle's fist passed through the space where her head had been. The crowd gasped. She'd actually dodged an Alpha's first strike. She came up in a defensive stance, everything Garrett had taught her flowing through muscle memory. Block. Move. Don't be where he expects you to be. Kyle's second attack was faster, a combination that should have ended the fight. Should have. But Lyra twisted, blocked the first hit with her forearm, pain exploding through the bone, but holding, and ducked under the second. 5 seconds. She'd survived 5 seconds. Lucky, Kyle growled, and came at her again. This time she couldn't dodge completely. His fist caught her shoulder, and she felt something crack. The impact sent her sprawling, pain white-hot, and immediate. The crowd roared. This was what they'd come for. Blood. Lyra rolled to her feet, favoring her injured shoulder. 10 seconds, maybe. The 30-second mark was still far away. Kyle stalked toward her and she saw it. The overconfidence Garrett had mentioned. He thought this was over, thought she was done. She waited until he was close, until he committed to another devastating strike. Then she moved. Not away this time, toward, inside his guard where his size was a disadvantage. Her fist drove into his ribs, right where Garrett had shown her. The weak spot every wolf had. Kale's breath exploded out. His eyes widened in surprise. She'd hurt him. Not much, not seriously, but she'd actually hurt an Alpha. The crowd went silent. Lyra didn't wait for his response. She drove her knee toward his stomach, but he was already recovering, already moving. His hand caught her leg, and then she was flying, tumbling across the arena floor. This time when she hit the ground, something definitely broke. Ribs, maybe. Everything hurt too much to tell. But she got up anyway. 20 seconds, maybe 25. Kale wasn't smiling anymore. You've been training. You're not the only one who can prepare. It won't matter. He rushed her again, but this time there was no carelessness, no playing. He was actually trying now, and the difference was terrifying. Lyra blocked, dodged, did everything Garrett had taught her. It wasn't enough. Kyle was too strong, too fast, too experienced. His fist caught her stomach, driving the air from her lungs. His elbows smashed into her back, sending her to her knees. 30 seconds. She'd made it 30 seconds. Now the real fight began. She forced herself up, spitting blood. The crowd was screaming, but she couldn't hear individual words anymore. Just noise. Just chaos. Kale circled her like a predator. Yield. No. I'll break every bone in your body. You'll have to. Something flashed in his eyes. Not respect exactly, but acknowledgement. Then he attacked, and there was no more time for words. Lyra fought like her life depended on it, because it did. She blocked what she could, dodged what she couldn't block, and took hits she couldn't avoid. Each impact was agony. Each breath was fire, but she stayed on her feet. 1 minute, 2 minutes, the crowd was going insane. This wasn't supposed to happen. The Omega was supposed to be broken by now, yielding or unconscious or dead, but she kept getting up. 3 minutes, 4. Kale's frustration was growing. She could see it in his movements, sharper now, less controlled. He was actually having to work for this. Stay down, he roared, his fist catching her jaw and sending her sprawling. Lyra tasted blood, felt something loose in her mouth, a tooth, probably. Her vision was blurring, her body screaming at her to stop. She got up anyway. 5 minutes. The crowd was chanting now, counting down. They knew about the 10-minute mark. Everyone knew. Kyle knew too. His face was dark with rage. You can't win, he snarled, landing a hit that cracked more ribs. Don't have to, Lyra gasped, barely staying upright. Just have to last. 6 minutes. She was running on nothing now. Adrenaline and stubbornness and something else. Something she couldn't name. Her wolf was stirring inside her, agitated in a way it had never been before. 7 minutes. Kael's next hit should have ended it, should have knocked her out, broken her completely. But at the last second, something changed. Lyra felt it, a surge of something inside her, hot and wild and nothing like her weak Omega wolf. She moved faster than she ever had, catching his wrist, twisting. For just a second, she had leverage. The crowd went silent. Then Kael roared and threw her off, sending her tumbling across the arena. But for that one moment, she'd stopped an alpha's attack. 8 minutes. Lyra tried to stand and couldn't. Her legs wouldn't hold her anymore. Everything was broken, bleeding, failing, but she wasn't yielding. Kael approached slowly. It's over. Not yet. Look at you, you can't even stand. Don't need to stand, just need to last. She coughed, tasting more blood. How much time? The crowd answered for her, screaming the count. 8 minutes, 30 seconds, 90 seconds to go. Kael's face was murderous. I'm going to make this hurt. He reached for her, and Lyra did the only thing she could. She rolled, scrambled, crawled if she had to, keeping distance, buying seconds. 9 minutes. Kael caught her ankle, dragging her back. His fist raised for the killing blow. The bond in her chest, silent for days, suddenly screamed. Not pain this time. Something else. Warning. Lyra looked up and saw it in his eyes. He was going to kill her, not knock her out, not force her to yield. Kill her. Because she'd lasted too long. Because she'd made him look weak. Because she'd humiliated him in front of the entire kingdom. The crowd was counting. 10, 9, 8. 60 seconds. 50. Lyra's vision was fading. Her body was giving up. She'd fought as hard as she could, lasted longer than anyone thought possible, but it wasn't going to be enough. 7, 6, 5. Kael's fist descended, and something inside Lyra broke open. Not bones this time. Something deeper. Something she didn't understand. Power flooded through her veins, hot and wild and completely foreign. Her wolf surged, but it didn't feel like her wolf anymore. It felt like something else entirely. Her hand shot up, catching Kael's fist. The impact drove her into the ground, cracked the arena floor beneath her. But she held it, held his strength with her own. The crowd went silent again. Kael's eyes widened. What? 4, 3, 2. Lyra's wolf was howling inside her, but it sounded different, bigger, stronger, like something had awakened that had been sleeping for generations. 1. The bells rang. 10 minutes. She'd made it. The crowd erupted into chaos, cheering, screaming, disbelief. Lyra released Kael's fist and collapsed, the strange power fading as quickly as it had come. Everything hurt. Everything was broken. But she'd survived. Counselor Vera's voice cut through the chaos. By the laws of Pact Challenge, Lyra Vale has withstood an alpha assault for 10 minutes without yielding. She is entitled to petition for status elevation pending council review. Kael stood over her, breathing hard, his face twisted with rage and something else. Something that might have been fear. This isn't over, he said quietly, so only she could hear. Whatever just happened, that thing you did, it's not natural. The council will investigate. They'll find out what you are. What I am, Lyra whispered, is still alive. He walked away without another word, leaving her bleeding on the arena floor. Medical staff rushed forward, but Lyra waved them off. She needed to stand, needed to walk out of here on her own feet, or whatever had she'd just won would be meaningless. It took everything she had, but she stood. The crowd went insane again, and this time it wasn't mockery. It was awe. The Omega who'd lasted 10 minutes against an Alpha. The impossible made real. Lyra limped toward the tunnel, each step agony. Garrett was waiting there, his face unreadable. "You did it," he said. "I did something." She leaned against the wall, trying not to pass out. "What was that? At the end?" "I don't know, but whatever it was, Draven felt it too, and he's scared." That should have felt like victory. Instead, it felt like she'd just made everything much, much worse. Marcus met them in the tunnel, his face pale. Lyra, you need to hear this. The council's calling an emergency session. About my elevation? About your exile. The world tilted. What? Your pack, Ashwick. They voted to exile you, effective immediately. They're claiming you're too dangerous, that you used forbidden magic in the arena. Marcus looked sick. Without pack standing, you can't petition for elevation. The loophole doesn't apply to rogues. Lyra stared at him. They can't do that. They already did. The vote was unanimous. But I won. I survived. And they're terrified of what that means. Marcus grabbed her shoulders. Lyra, you have to run. Now, before they make it official. Garrett was already moving. I know routes to the borderlands, ways to avoid patrols. We leave now. We might make it. But Lyra wasn't listening. She was staring back at the arena, at the crowd that had cheered for her moments ago. The same crowd that would watch her be exiled without protest. The same system that had tried to erase her was doing it again, changing the rules to make sure she lost. No, she said. Lyra, I said no. She straightened up, ignoring the screaming pain in her ribs. I'm not running. I'm done running. Then what are you going to do? Marcus demanded. Lyra thought about Kael's face when she'd caught his fist, the fear in his eyes, the power that had flooded through her, foreign and ancient and absolutely not normal. I'm going to challenge him again, she said, not to a time limit this time, to a fight to the death. The tunnel went silent. That's suicide, Garrett said. Maybe, but at least this time I'll die on my own terms. She looked at them both. And if I win? You can't win. If I win, she continued, the exile becomes irrelevant. The winner of a death challenge takes everything from the loser. Territory, status, pack, everything. Marcus's eyes went wide. You can't be serious. Do I look like I'm joking? She didn't wait for an answer. Lyra turned and limped back toward the arena, toward the crowd, toward the council and Kael, and the entire system that wanted her gone. She'd survived 10 minutes. Now she was going to bet everything on being able to survive just a little bit longer. She'd survived 10 minutes. Now she was going to bet everything on being able to survive just a little bit longer. The arena fell silent as Lyra limped back through the tunnel entrance. Blood dripped from her mouth, her ribs screamed with every breath, but she kept moving. The crowd parted like water, staring at her like she'd risen from the dead. Maybe she had. Lyra, stop! Marcus grabbed her arm, but she shook him off. Where is he? Her voice carried across the arena, rough and damaged but clear. Where's Kael Draven? The crowd's murmur grew louder. Kael stood near the council's platform, speaking with Vera and two other counselors. He turned at the sound of his name, his expression unreadable. Lyra forced herself to walk straight, to hide the limp, to pretend her body wasn't screaming at her to lie down and never get up. She stopped in the center of the arena, in the same spot where they'd started the first challenge. I invoke the right of blood challenge, she said, her voice magically amplified by the arena's acoustics. Kael Draven, I challenge you to a fight to the death. The silence shattered into chaos. People were shouting, arguing, some cheering, some cursing. The counselors looked like they'd been slapped, and Kael just stared at her with something that might have been respect or might have been fury. Maybe both. You can't be serious, Vera said, her voice cutting through the noise. You're barely standing. You've just survived one challenge. This is suicide. Then it's my suicide to commit. Lyra turned to face the council platform. Pack law is clear. Any wolf can issue a blood challenge to any other wolf, regardless of rank. The challenged must accept or forfeit all status and territory. She's right, one of the other counselors said reluctantly. The law is explicit. The law assumes both parties are capable of fighting, Vera shot back. Look at her, she's half dead already. I'm standing, Lyra said. That's all the law requires. Kael stepped forward and the crowd quieted again. He studied her for a long moment, his eyes cataloging every injury, every weakness. Then he smiled, and it was the coldest thing Lyra had ever seen. You want to die that badly? I want to stop being treated like something you can throw away when it becomes inconvenient. You think winning will change that? You think killing me, if you even could, would make them accept you? He gestured to the crowd. They'll always see you as less. Always. Maybe. But at least I'll have tried. Something flickered across his face. Not sympathy, nothing that kind. But understanding, maybe. Like he recognized something in her that he thought was uniquely his. When? He asked. Now. You're insane. Probably. Do you accept or not? Kyle looked at the council, at his guards, at the crowd waiting for his answer. Refusing would brand him a coward, strip him of everything he'd built. But accepting meant fighting an Omega who'd just done the impossible, who'd caught his fist when she should have been dead, an Omega who'd felt like an alpha for just a moment. I accept, he said, but not now. You can barely stand, and I won't have anyone say I won because you couldn't fight properly. He turned to Vera. 3 days. Give her 3 days to heal. That's not, Vera started. 3 days, Kael repeated, his voice carrying the weight of absolute authority. Or I withdraw from the challenge entirely and cede my territory to her right now. The crowd exploded again. Ceding territory was unthinkable, but so was everything else that had happened in the last 10 minutes. Vera's face was a mask of barely controlled rage. The council will need to convene, then convene. You have 3 days. Kael looked back at Lyra. Heal fast. When we fight again, I want you at full strength. I want there to be no doubt about the outcome. He walked away, his guards falling in behind him. The crowd started to disperse, already spreading the news, already placing new bets. Lyra stood in the center of the arena until her legs finally gave out. Garrett caught her before she hit the ground. That was either brilliant or the stupidest thing I've ever seen, he muttered, half carrying her toward the medical tent. Can it be both? With you, apparently. The medical tent was chaos. Healers rushed around, arguing about treatment, about whether anything could fix her in 3 days. Lyra let them poke and prod, set bones and bandage wounds, while her mind raced. 3 days. She had 3 days to figure out what the hell had happened when she'd caught Kyle's fist. 3 days to learn how to do it again. 3 days to become something she wasn't. Emma appeared beside the cot, her face streaked with tears. What were you thinking? I wasn't. That's kind of the problem. They're going to kill you. The pack exile still stands, and now you've challenged an alpha to the death. You're going to die, Lyra. Really die this time. Maybe not. What happened out there, at the end? Emma's voice dropped to a whisper. People are saying you moved like an alpha, that you stopped his attack with strength that shouldn't exist. Lyra looked at her hands. They looked normal. Weak. Exactly like they always had. I don't know, she admitted. Something changed. Just for a second. Can you do it again? I have no idea. The healers finished their work and left them alone. Lyra stared at the tent ceiling, feeling every injury, every broken bone, every bruise. Her body was wrecked. 3 days wouldn't be enough to heal, not fully, but it would have to be. Marcus entered the tent, his face grim. We need to talk. Privately. Emma squeezed Lyra's hand and left. Marcus waited until they were alone before speaking. The pack exile vote? It wasn't unanimous. You said, I lied. 3 people voted against it. Emma, Garrett, and someone else. Someone who wants to meet with you. Who? Can't say. Not here. Too many ears. Marcus pulled out a scrap of paper with an address. Midnight. Come alone. I can barely walk. Then crawl. This is important. He paused at the tent entrance. Lyra, there are things about you, about your bloodline, that you don't know. Things people have worked very hard to keep buried. But after what happened in that arena, secrets are starting to surface. What kind of secrets? The kind that get people killed for knowing too much. He slipped out before she could ask anything else. Lyra lay there, turning the paper over in her hands. Every instinct screamed that this was a trap, that whoever wanted to meet her wanted to finish what Kael had started. But what choice did she have? At midnight, Lyra dragged herself out of the medical tent. The settlement was quiet. Most people asleep were pretending to be. She followed the address to an old building on the edge of town, one of the original structures from when Ashwick was first settled. The door was unlocked. Inside, a single candle lit a room full of dust and forgotten things. An old woman sat in a chair by the window, her face hidden in shadow. "Close the door," the woman said. Lyra did, her hand instinctively moving to the knife Garrett had given her. Not that it would do much good in her current state. The woman leaned forward into the candlelight, and Lyra's breath caught. She was ancient, easily 90, with eyes that had seen too much and remembered all of it. "You don't know me," the woman said, "but I knew your mother, and your grandmother, and her mother before that. My mother died when I was born. So they told you a lot of lies." The woman gestured to a chair. "Sit. You look like you're about to fall over." Lyra sat, her ribs protesting. "Who are you?" "My name is Helena. I was the settlement's record keeper before they decided records were too dangerous, before they started burning histories that didn't fit the narrative they wanted." "What narrative?" "That power comes from alpha bloodlines. That strength is inherited through dominance and violence." Helena's eyes glittered in the candlelight. "But there are older bloodlines, ones that predate the pack system entirely, ones they've tried very hard to eliminate." Lyra's heart was pounding. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying that what happened in the arena tonight, that power you felt, it wasn't random. It wasn't luck." Helena pulled out an old leather journal, its pages yellowed with age. "Your bloodline carries something the Alphas fear, something they've spent generations trying to breed out or kill off entirely." She opened the journal to a page marked with ribbon. Lyra leaned forward, squinting at the faded writing. It was a family tree. Her family tree. Her mother's name was there, Lyra Vale. And above it, her grandmother, Seraphina. And above that, more names stretching back generations. But it was the notation beside each name that made Lyra's blood run cold. Primal bloodline. True alpha heritage. Executed. Over and over. Executed. Eliminated. Disappeared. "They killed them," Lyra whispered. "They killed my entire bloodline." "Not entirely. Some escaped. Some hid." Helena tapped Lyra's mother's name. Mira was smart. She suppressed her power, pretended to be Omega, lived quietly. She thought if she never drew attention, they'd never find out what she really was. But they did find out. Not until you were born. The moment you took your first breath, she knew. You carried it too. The primal blood. So she made a choice. Helena's voice was soft. She used forbidden magic to bind your power, to lock it away so deep you'd never know it existed. Then she died, either from the magic's cost or from someone who'd figured out what she'd done. The records aren't clear. Lyra couldn't breathe. "That's not possible. I'm Omega. I've always been Omega." "You've always been bound. There's a difference." Helena pulled out another page, this one covered in symbols Lyra didn't recognize. "The binding was supposed to last your whole life, keep you safe by keeping you weak. But bonds can break, especially under extreme stress." The arena. The moment she'd caught Kael's fist. "It's starting to crack," Lyra said. "Yes, and when it breaks completely, if it breaks, you'll become what you were always meant to be." Helena's expression was grave. "But the process could kill you. The magic holding that power back is old and strong. Breaking it is like breaking a dam. Everything floods out at once." "How do I control it?" "You don't. Not at first. The primal bloodline doesn't work like alpha dominance. It's older, wilder, more instinctive. You have to learn to work with it, not against it." "In 3 days." "In 3 days," Helena confirmed, "or you die trying." Lyra looked at the journal again, at the names of women who'd been killed for carrying this power. "Why tell me this now? If the binding was keeping me safe," "Because safe isn't the same as alive. You were dying slowly, wasting away as an Omega when you're anything but. And now that the binding's cracking anyway, you deserve to know the truth." Helena closed the journal. "Besides, I'm old. I'm dying. Someone needs to know this history before it's lost completely. What do I do?" "The binding will break when it breaks. You can't force it, but you can prepare." Helena stood surprisingly steady for her age. "Come with me." She led Lyra through a hidden door in the back of the building, down stairs that went deeper than should have been possible. The air grew cold, thick with the smell of earth and old magic. At the bottom was a chamber carved from stone, its walls covered in symbols that seemed to move in the torchlight. "This is where your grandmother trained," Helena said, "before they found her, before they killed her for being too strong." In the center of this chamber was a circle of stones, each one marked with symbols similar to those in the journal. Power hummed in the air, raising the hair on Lyra's arms. "Step inside the circle." Lyra hesitated. "What will happen?" "Honestly, I don't know. The binding might resist, might try to protect itself, but if you want any chance of surviving that fight, you need to start breaking it down now, carefully, deliberately, before it shatters on its own and destroys you from the inside out." Lyra thought about Emma's face when she'd accepted the death challenge, about Garrett risking everything to train her, about every person who'd ever looked through her like she was nothing. She stepped into the circle. The world exploded. Pain ripped through her, worse than anything in the arena. It felt like her bones were reforming, her blood burning, her very soul being torn apart and rewritten. The binding her mother had created fought back, trying to keep the power locked away, trying to keep her safe. But Lyra was done being safe. She screamed, falling to her knees as something inside her began to crack. Not her body. Something deeper. The cage her mother had built around her power. Images flashed through her mind. Her mother, young and strong, her eyes glowing with power as she worked the binding spell. Her grandmother, fighting 3 alphas at once and winning. Further back, women whose names she didn't know, but whose strength she could feel in her blood. This was her legacy, not weakness, power. The binding cracked wider. Lyra's wolf surged, but it wasn't the small, pathetic thing she'd always known. It was massive, primal, ancient. It howled inside her with a voice that shook the chamber. "Fight it," Helena shouted. "Don't let it consume you. Master it, or it will destroy you." But Lyra didn't know how to master something she'd never felt before. The power was too much, too wild, flooding through channels that had been empty her entire life. She was drowning in it. Her vision went white, her body convulsed. Distantly, she heard Helena chanting something, felt hands on her shoulders. But it was all fading. The last thing she thought before darkness took her was that her mother had been right. This power was too dangerous. It was going to kill her. She woke to agony. Every nerve was on fire. Every muscle felt like it had been shredded and rebuilt wrong. Lyra opened her eyes to find herself still in the chamber, lying on cold stone. Helena sat beside her, looking exhausted. "You've been out for 6 hours. What happened?" "The binding cracked. Not completely, but enough. Your body is trying to adjust to having access to power it's never had before." Helena helped her sit up. "How do you feel?" Lyra took inventory. The injuries from the arena were still there, still painful, but underneath was something else. Strength. Real strength, not the feeble omega weakness she'd lived with all her life. "Different," she said. "Can you stand?" Lyra tried. Her legs shook, but they held. She felt taller somehow, though she knew that was impossible. "Look at your hands." Lyra held them up. They looked the same, but when she flexed her fingers, she felt power there. Actual, physical power. "The binding is still partially intact," Helena said. "Your mother's magic is strong, but you've broken through enough to access some of your true strength. The rest will come as you need it, or it'll come all at once and burn you out completely." Hard to say. That's not reassuring. It's not meant to be, it's realistic. Helena stood, her joints popping. "You have 2.5 days before the death challenge. Use them wisely." "How?" "Practice. Learn your limits. Figure out what you can do before you're in that arena with Kael trying to rip your throat out." Helena headed for the stairs. "And be careful. The more power you use, the more the binding will fight back. Use too much too fast and it could snap completely. That would be bad." "How bad?" Helena looked back, her ancient eyes sad. "Your grandmother used too much too fast. She died screaming, her own power burning her alive from the inside. So, that kind of bad." She left Lyra alone in the chamber. Lyra stared at her hands, at the power she could feel humming just beneath her skin. It was intoxicating, terrifying, everything she'd never known she wanted, and it could kill her as easily as Kael could. She needed to test it, carefully. Lyra focused on the smallest stone in the circle, just moving it, nothing dramatic. She reached out with her mind the way she'd always reached for her weak Omega wolf. But instead of that familiar feeble presence, she found something vast. Something that made her Omega wolf look like a puppy next to a dire wolf. The stone trembled, then lifted. Just an inch off the ground, but it lifted. Lyra's concentration broke and the stone fell. But she was grinning despite the exhaustion that suddenly washed over her. She could do it. She had real power. The next 2 days were brutal. Lyra spent every waking hour in the chamber, learning to access her power without letting it consume her. Helena coached her through it, teaching her techniques her grandmother had used, helping her understand the balance between using the power and being used by it. Garrett visited when he could, bringing food and news. The settlement was in chaos. The council was meeting constantly, trying to figure out legal loopholes. Kael was training, preparing to end her permanently. And people were choosing sides. Some think you're a hero, Garrett said on the second day, standing up to the system. Others think you're an abomination that needs to be put down. What do you think? I think you're going to die if you don't focus. He gestured to the training dummy Helena had brought down. Again, faster this time. Lyra struck, putting her new strength behind it. The dummy's head exploded. Too much, Helena said. You have to control it. Channel it precisely, or you'll burn yourself out before the fight even starts. Control. Everything came back to control. On the third morning, Lyra woke feeling different. The binding was still there, but it had stopped fighting her. Instead, it felt like it was waiting. Today's the day, Helena said, entering the chamber with breakfast. How do you feel? Terrified. Good. Fear keeps you sharp. Helena set down the tray. I need to tell you something about the death challenge. Lyra's stomach tightened. What? I've been listening to council meetings, guard conversations. They're planning something. Planning what? An assassination. If you start winning, if you actually hurt Kael, they're going to intervene, kill you and claim it was lawful because you used forbidden magic. Lyra's blood ran cold. They can't do that. The challenge is sacred. The challenge was supposed to be impossible. An Omega beating an Alpha destroys their entire worldview. They won't let it happen. Helena grabbed her shoulders. You need to end it fast, before they have time to act. I can't beat Kael fast. He's too strong, too experienced. Then you need to do what your grandmother did. What they killed her for. Helena's grip tightened. You need to go primal, fully. Break the binding completely and accept whatever comes. You said that would kill me. It might, but it's your only chance. Helena released her, stepping back. I've prepared something. A ritual. It won't break the binding for you, but it will weaken it enough that you can shatter it yourself when the time comes. The rest is up to you. When? Now. We're out of time. The ritual took an hour. Helena chanted in a language Lyra didn't recognize, drawing symbols on her skin with something that burned. Power built in the chamber, pressing down like a physical weight. When it finished, Lyra felt the binding groan. Cracks spiderwebbed through it, weakening but not breaking. One good push, Helena said. One moment of absolute need and it'll shatter. Make sure you're ready when that happens. How will I know I'm ready? You won't. That's the point. They climbed back up to the surface. The sun was setting. The challenge was scheduled for dusk. Emma was waiting in the old building, her face pale. The whole kingdom's here. They filled the arena 3 times over. People are watching on screens, placing bets, making it into a spectacle. Of course they are. Lyra! Emma's voice broke. Come back. Please come back. Lyra hugged her, feeling how fragile Emma was compared to the power now humming in her veins. I'll try. Garrett arrived with Marcus, both of them armed despite the rules against interference. Just in case, Garrett said when she looked at the weapons. If they try anything, we're not going quietly. You'll get yourselves killed. Probably. But we're doing it anyway. Marcus handed her a small vial. Painkiller. Not much, but it'll take the edge off. Lyra drank it, feeling the medicine spread through her system. It helped. A little. The injuries from the first challenge had healed as much as they were going to, but she was still carrying damage. It would have to be enough. The walk to the arena felt like walking to her execution. Maybe it was. The crowd noise was deafening even before they reached the entrance. Thousands of people, all there to watch her die or witness a miracle. Probably the former. In the tunnel, Lyra paused. Helena had followed them, moving surprisingly fast for her age. "Remember," the old woman said quietly, "the binding will fight you. Your power will try to consume you, and the council will try to kill you. Trust nothing except your instincts." "That's it? That's your advice?" Helena smiled, sad and ancient. "You wanted encouragement? You're about to fight the strongest alpha in the north with power you barely understand, and a binding that could kill you if it breaks wrong. There is no encouragement. There's only survival." Then she was gone, melting back into the shadows. Lyra stepped into the arena alone. The crowd's roar hit her like a physical force. The setting sun painted everything blood red, and across the arena Kyle Draven waited. He looked different, focused, deadly. This wasn't the overconfident alpha from the first challenge. This was a killer preparing to end a threat. Counselor Vera stood in the center again, but this time she was flanked by guards. Insurance, Lyra realized. They were ready to step in the moment things went wrong. "Blood challenge," Vera announced. "Fight until one party is dead. No mercy, no surrender, no interference." That last part was a lie, but Lyra didn't call her on it. What was the point? "Fighters, approach." Lyra walked forward, feeling every eye in the arena on her. The binding pulsed, weakened but still holding. The power beneath it stirred, waiting. Kale met her in the center. Up close she could see he hadn't slept, could see the tension in his jaw, the wariness in his eyes. He felt it too, the change in her. "This is your last chance," he said quietly. "Yield. I'll make it quick, painless." "No." "Then I'm sorry." "No, you're not." His expression hardened. "You're right. I'm not." Vera raised her hand. The arena fell silent. "Begin." Kale exploded into motion, faster than before, stronger than before. He'd been holding back in the first challenge. He wasn't holding back now. His fist came at her face with enough force to shatter bone. Lyra twisted, letting her new power flow through her, and dodged by a hair's breadth. The crowd gasped. She'd moved with alpha speed. Kale's eyes narrowed. He attacked again, a combination that would have killed her 3 days ago. But she wasn't the same person she'd been 3 days ago. Lyra blocked, countered, her body moving with a grace and power she'd never possessed. The binding groaned, cracking wider with each movement. They traded blows, neither giving ground. The crowd was going insane. This wasn't supposed to happen. The Omega was supposed to die quickly, but Lyra was fighting like an alpha. No, like something more. Kale roared and increased his intensity. His fist caught her ribs, broken ribs from the first fight, and Lyra felt something crack. Pain exploded through her. The binding shuddered. She staggered back, and Kyle pressed his advantage. Hits rained down, each one calculated to break her, to force her to yield or die. But yielding wasn't an option, and dying wasn't either. Lyra felt the binding crack wider. Power leaked through more than before, flooding her system. Her vision sharpened, her strength doubled. She caught Kale's next punch. The impact drove her back 3 feet, cracked the arena floor, but she held it. Kale's eyes went wide. "What are you?" "Something you tried to erase." Lyra pushed back, and this time it was Kale who stumbled. The crowd's noise reached a fever pitch. They traded blows again, but now it was different. Now it was equal. No, not equal. Lyra could feel it. The binding was still limiting her. If it broke, if she accessed her full power... Kale's elbow caught her temple. Stars exploded across her vision. She fell, rolled, came up bleeding. The binding was cracking faster now, damaged by the fight. Helena's warning echoed in her mind. Use too much too fast and it would burn her alive. But not using enough would let Kale kill her. She had to choose. Kale stalked toward her. "It's over. Whatever you are, it's not enough." He was right. Half bound, she couldn't win. She needed more. She needed everything. Lyra closed her eyes and reached for the binding, for the cracks Helena had created, for the power her mother had locked away to keep her safe. And she pushed. The binding shattered. Power exploded through her, so much power she couldn't breathe, couldn't think. It was like being struck by lightning and drowned in fire at the same time. Her wolf howled, but it sounded like 1,000 wolves, like something primal and ancient and absolutely unstoppable. Lyra's eyes snapped open, and she knew they were glowing, could feel it. Kale took a step back. No, that's not possible. Apparently it is. She moved. Not alpha speed. Something faster, something that made the crowd blur, made Kyle look slow despite his power. Her fist caught his stomach, and he doubled over, the air exploding from his lungs. She didn't stop, couldn't stop. The power was screaming through her, demanding release. Another hit, another, each one precise, devastating, backed by strength that shouldn't exist. Kale tried to counter, but she was too fast, too strong. Everything she'd been bred to be, everything the binding had suppressed, was pouring out. She was magnificent. She was terrifying. She was burning alive from the inside. Helena's warning crashed back. Too much power, too fast. The binding had shattered all at once, and now there was nothing controlling the flood. Lyra could feel her body starting to break down. The power was too much. It was consuming her, burning through her like she was kindling. But she couldn't stop. If she stopped, Kael would recover, would kill her. She had to end this, now. Kael was on his knees, blood pouring from a dozen wounds. The strongest alpha in the north, beaten. Lyra grabbed him by the throat, lifting him off the ground with one hand. The crowd had gone silent, stunned. Yield, she gasped, feeling her body starting to fail. Heat was building in her core, burning hotter with each second. Kael's eyes met hers. No defiance now, just shock. And something that might have been respect. I yield, he whispered. The arena erupted, but Lyra barely heard it. The power was out of control, burning through her. She dropped Kyle and stumbled back, feeling her skin start to crack, to glow from the inside. She was dying. The power was killing her. Guards rushed forward, not to help, to execute. She saw weapons raised, saw Vera giving the order. And then Garrett and Marcus were there, blocking them. Emma too, small and terrified, but standing between Lyra and the guards anyway. She won, Garrett roared. He yielded. The challenge is over. She used forbidden magic, Vera shouted back. She's an abomination. The guards advanced. Lyra tried to move, to defend herself, but the power was consuming her. She fell to her knees, feeling the heat building, building. This was it. She'd won the fight, but lost anyway. The power was going to burn her to nothing. And then hands touched her shoulders. Cool hands, ancient hands. Helena. The old woman was chanting, the same language from the ritual. Power flowed from her into Lyra, not adding to the inferno, but channeling it, directing it, teaching Lyra's body how to contain it. Listen to me, Helena hissed. The power isn't your enemy. It's you. Accept it or die. Lyra tried, reached for the burning, tried to embrace it instead of fighting it. The power resisted. It wanted to destroy, to consume, to burn. But underneath was something else. Recognition. This power knew her, had been part of her bloodline for generations. It was her birthright. Lyra stopped fighting and accepted. The burning began to fade, not disappearing, but settling, becoming part of her instead of something foreign. The glow under her skin dimmed. She could breathe again. That's it, Helena whispered. You're okay. You're going to be okay. Lyra looked up to see the guards had stopped, weapons still raised but uncertain. Vera was screaming orders, but nobody was moving, because Kael Draven, bleeding and broken, had placed himself between Lyra and the guards. The challenge is over, he said, his voice carrying despite his injuries. She won. Anyone who touches her answers to me. You yielded, Vera shouted. You have no authority? I yielded the challenge. Not my territory, not my authority. Kael's eyes were hard. And I'm telling you, as Alpha of the Northern Territories, that this woman won fairly. Anyone who says otherwise is calling me a liar. The guards lowered their weapons. Nobody wanted to challenge an Alpha, even a defeated one. Vera's face was murderous, but she stepped back. This isn't over. Yeah, Lyra managed, her voice raw. It is. She stood, every muscle screaming, the power still wild inside her, but controlled. Barely. The crowd was silent now, watching waiting to see what happened next. Lyra looked at Kyle, at the man who'd rejected her, humiliated her, tried to kill her, who was now standing between her and execution. "Why?" she asked. "Because you won," he said simply, "and because—" He paused, something complicated crossing his face. "Because you were right. The system is broken, and maybe it takes someone like you to fix it." He walked away, his guard supporting him, leaving Lyra standing alone in the center of the arena. She'd won. She'd actually won. And now she had absolutely no idea what to do next. She'd won. She'd actually won. And now she had absolutely no idea what to do next. The arena remained silent for another heartbeat, then exploded. Half the crowd was cheering, screaming her name like she was some kind of hero. The other half looked like they'd watched the world end. Maybe they had. Everything they believed about power, about hierarchy, about the natural order, she'd just shattered it all. Lyra stood in the center of it all, feeling the power still churning inside her. Controlled now, barely, but wild enough that she could feel it pushing at the edges of her restraint. Helena's hand was still on her shoulder, anchoring her. "Breathe," the old woman murmured. "Don't let them see you falter." Right, because showing weakness now would be fatal. The council might have backed down in the face of Kyle's protection, but they wouldn't forget. Wouldn't forgive. Vera was already deep in conversation with the other counselors, their faces twisted with barely concealed rage. Planning, scheming, looking for any legal loophole to undo what had just happened. Garrett pushed through the crowd, Emma and Marcus right behind him. They formed a protective circle around her, weapons still visible despite the challenge being over. "We need to move," Garrett said quietly. "Now, before they regroup." "Move where?" Lyra's voice came out rougher than she expected. "I just won. The territory is mine by right of challenge." "The territory, maybe, but there are still people who want you dead, and they're not going to wait for legal proceedings." He glanced at the council platform. "Trust me, we need to get you somewhere defensible." Marcus nodded. "The old settlement hall. It's built like a fortress. We can hold it if we have to." "If we have to?" Emma's voice was shrill with stress. "They just tried to execute her in the middle of the arena. Of course we have to." Lyra looked around at the crowd. Some faces were hostile, others awed, most just confused. A week ago, she'd been nobody. Now she'd beaten the strongest alpha in the north and claimed his territory. The social order had inverted so fast people didn't know how to react. "Fine," she said. "Let's go." They moved through the crowd, which parted reluctantly. Some people reached out, trying to touch her like she was something miraculous. Others spat at her feet, cursing under their breath. Lyra ignored both reactions, focusing on putting one foot in front of the other. The power inside her was starting to settle, finding pathways in her body that had never existed before. It hurt, like breaking in new muscles, except these muscles were made of something that felt more like lightning than flesh. Every step sent small shocks through her nervous system. But she could walk, could function, wouldn't burn alive from her own strength. That counted as a win. The old settlement hall loomed ahead, exactly as Marcus had described, built in the early days when the border was even more dangerous, designed to withstand sieges. Thick stone walls, narrow windows, one reinforced door. They barricaded themselves inside. "Now what?" Emma asked, pacing nervously. "We can't just hide in here forever." "We don't have to hide." Lyra sank into a chair, every injury from both challenges screaming at her now that the adrenaline was fading. "I won the challenge. The territory is mine. They have to acknowledge that." "Since when does the council care about what they have to do?" Garrett was checking weapons, loading crossbows that looked ancient but functional. "They've spent centuries maintaining power through the Alpha system. You just proved an Omega can beat an Alpha. They'll find a way to bury you before they let that truth spread." Helena had followed them in, moving to a corner where she began pulling supplies from a bag Lyra hadn't noticed she was carrying. Herbs, bottles, things that looked suspiciously like spell components. "He's right," the old woman said without looking up. "You've won the battle, but not the war. The council will come at you legally first. Challenge the legitimacy of your bloodline, claim you used forbidden magic, which you did, technically. They'll try to strip your victory through bureaucracy. And if that doesn't work?" Helena's expression was grim. "Then they'll send assassins. Quiet, deniable ones. You'll die in your sleep or from poisoned food or a convenient accident. They've done it before. Encouraging, Lyra muttered. You wanted honesty. Outside, they could hear the settlement coming alive. Voices raised in argument, the sound of people moving, gathering. Some were probably supporters. Most were probably not. Marcus appeared at the window. There's a crowd forming, maybe 200 people. They're arguing about what to do. About me. About everything. Some want to swear loyalty to you as the new alpha. Others want to drag you out and finish what the council started. Most are just scared. He turned from the window. We need a plan. An actual plan. Not just hiding and hoping they give up. Lyra closed her eyes, trying to think past the exhaustion and pain. She'd spent so much energy just surviving, just winning, that she hadn't thought about what came after. The territory rights, she said slowly. If I won Kyle's territory, what does that actually mean? Everything, Marcus said. His land, his resources, his pact bonds. Anyone sworn to him is now sworn to you. Even if they don't want to be? That's how it works. The bond transfers with the territory. They can break it, but doing so makes them rogue. Most won't risk that. An idea was forming. Dangerous, probably stupid, but better than nothing. What about other territories, other pacts? What about them? Can they refuse to acknowledge the transfer, say it's invalid? Marcus and Garrett exchanged glances. Technically no, Garrett said. A death challenge outcome is binding across all territories. That's ancient law, predates the council. But in practice, if the council declares it invalid, most alphas will go along with it. Challenging the council means risking everything. So we need to make sure they can't declare it invalid. Lyra opened her eyes. We need witnesses, important ones, people who can't be ignored or bought off. Who did you have in mind? The other territorial alphas, all of them. She stood, ignoring her body's protests. If I can get them to witness my claim, to acknowledge it publicly, the council can't just erase it. They'd have to fight every alpha in the kingdom. Emma stared at her. You want to invite the most powerful wolves in the kingdom here? To this settlement? Where half the population wants you dead? Yes. That's insane. Probably. But it's also the only way to make this stick. Lyra looked at Marcus. Can you send messages? Official ones? I can try. But Lyra, even if they come, there's no guarantee they'll support you. Most of these alphas are traditionalists. They believe in the hierarchy. An Omega claiming alpha territory violates everything they stand for. Then I'll have to convince them otherwise. Garrett laughed, sharp and humorless. With what? A speech? You think words are going to change centuries of tradition? No, but maybe the truth will. Lyra gestured to Helena. Tell them about the bloodlines, about what the council's been hiding. Helena looked up from her herbs, her ancient eyes considering. That's dangerous knowledge. People have died for less. People have died for a lot of things. Might as well make it count. Lyra met her gaze. You said someone needed to know the history. Let's make sure everyone knows. The old woman was quiet for a long moment. Then she nodded. I'll prepare the records, the proof. But Lyra, once this is public, there's no taking it back. You'll make enemies of everyone who's benefited from keeping it secret. I already have those enemies. Might as well make them official. Marcus moved to a desk in the corner, pulling out paper and ink. I'll draft the summons, but it'll take days for the alphas to arrive, maybe a week. Can we hold out that long? We'll have to. The next hours passed in tense preparation. Marcus sent runners with messages to every territorial alpha in the kingdom. Garrett organized defenses, turning the hall into something between a fortress and a tomb. Emma coordinated supplies, raiding the settlement stores for food and water. And Lyra sat with Helena, learning the history she should have known her entire life. Your bloodline goes back to before the pack system, Helena explained, spreading out ancient documents. Back when wolves were wild, following instinct rather than hierarchy, the primal alphas, that's what they were called, didn't dominate through strength alone. They led through understanding, through connection to something deeper. What happened to them? The same thing that always happens. Someone decided that power should be controlled, organized, made predictable. The pack system emerged, with its rigid hierarchies and rules. The primal bloodlines didn't fit. They were too wild, too unpredictable. So they were systematically eliminated. Lyra studied a faded drawing of a woman who looked disturbingly like her. How many are left? Besides you, I don't know. Most learn to hide, to suppress their power. Some probably don't even know what they are. Helena tapped the drawing. That's your great-great-grandmother, Elara. She tried to fight back to protect the primal lines. They killed her and everyone she loved. Except someone survived. Yes, someone always survives. Hides in plain sight, pretends to be weak, waits. Helena's expression was sad. Your mother thought if she made you weak enough, invisible enough, they'd never notice. But power like yours doesn't stay hidden forever. Outside, the sun was setting. The crowd had grown larger, their voices carrying through the stone walls. Some were chanting Lyra's name. Others were calling for her death. The settlement was tearing itself apart. Emma appeared at Lyra's side. You should eat something. You look half dead. Feel half dead, Lyra admitted, but she took the food anyway. Bread, cheese, some kind of dried meat. Her body needed fuel if she was going to heal. What you did out there, Emma said quietly. In the arena. I've never seen anything like it. Neither have I. Are you scared? Of the power? Lyra considered lying, then decided Emma deserved honesty. Terrified. It's like having a wildfire inside my chest. One wrong move and it could burn through me again. But you can control it? For now. Maybe. Ask me again tomorrow. Emma was quiet for a moment. The others, the Omegas in the settlement, they're asking about you, wanting to know if it's real, if one of us actually beat an alpha. It's real. Then what does that mean? For the rest of us? Lyra looked at her friend, this woman who'd been kind when kindness was dangerous. I don't know yet, but I'm going to find out. The first alpha arrived 2 days later. Lyra was in the hall's upper room, trying to meditate the way Helena had shown her when Garrett burst in. We have company. Alpha Vera Stoneheart from the Western Peaks. She's at the gate with 20 guards. Lyra's heart jumped. The council member Vera, or different Vera. This one's legitimate. Garrett's expression was unreadable. She wants to meet with you, alone. That's a terrible idea. Agreed. But refusing might be worse. She's one of the most powerful alphas in the kingdom. If she's here, others will follow. Lyra stood, checking her reflection in a cracked mirror. She looked terrible, bruised, exhausted, barely holding together. But her eyes were different. They carried power now, visible even to her. Fine, but you stay close. If this goes bad, already planning 6 different ways to evacuate you. They met in the main hall. Alpha Vera Stoneheart was everything her name suggested. Hard, unyielding, with eyes like flint. She studied Lyra the way someone might study an unfamiliar weapon. You're younger than I expected, Vera said. You're earlier than I expected. A hint of smile. I was close when your message arrived, and curious. The Omega who beat Kael Draven, that's not a story you hear every day. It's not a story. It happened. So I've heard. The question is how? Vera circled her slowly. Kael's no weakling. I fought him myself, barely won, and that was years ago when I was in my prime. Yet you, an Omega with no formal training, beat him to submission. I had help. From whom? Lyra hesitated. This was the moment. Either she trusted this alpha with the truth, or she kept lying and hoped it held. She chose truth. From my bloodline. I'm not actually Omega. I'm primal. Vera stopped circling. Primal alphas are extinct. Apparently not. Show me. Lyra looked at Garrett, who nodded reluctantly. She closed her eyes and reached for the power inside her. It came easier now, flowing through the pathways that had burned into her body. She opened her eyes, letting them glow. Vera took a step back, her hand moving to her weapon. Then she stopped, forcing herself to stand steady. Impossible. Improbable. But real. If this is true, if you're really primal, do you have any idea what that means? That the council will try to kill me? That everything we've built is based on a lie? Vera's voice was tight. The pack system, the hierarchy, all of it assumes primal lines are gone. If they're not, if you're proof they're not, then Omega doesn't mean weak. It means hidden. Vera stared at her for a long moment. Then, to Lyra's shock, she laughed. You're going to destroy the entire social order. You realize that? I'm going to try. Why? Revenge against Kael? No, because I'm tired of people being thrown away for not fitting the system. Tired of watching Omegas starve while Alphas feast. Tired of pretending the hierarchy is natural when it's just maintained by violence. Idealistic, naive even. Vera's expression softened slightly. But not entirely wrong. I'll admit the system has issues. Then help me fix it. You're asking me to commit treason against the council. I'm asking you to acknowledge reality. I beat Kael fairly. The territory is mine by law. Everything else is just politics. Vera was quiet, considering. Outside, more people were arriving. Lyra could hear horses, voices, the sound of an encampment forming. The other alphas are coming, Vera said. They'll want proof too, and not all of them are as open-minded as I am. I'll give them proof. Some will try to kill you for it. Let them try. That earned another smile, sharper this time. You've got spine. I'll give you that. Vera moved toward the door, then paused. One more question. What are you going to do with Kael's territory? With his pack? I haven't decided yet. Decide fast. A pack without clear leadership will tear itself apart. And these people, she gestured vaguely toward the settlement. Half of them still hate you. The other half worship you. Both are dangerous. After Vera left, Lyra slumped against the wall. One alpha down, dozens to go. That went better than expected, Garrett said. She didn't kill me. That's about all I can say for it. Over the next 3 days, more alphas arrived. Some were openly hostile, demanding to see proof before they'd even speak with her. Others were curious, intrigued by the impossible. A few were clearly council plants, there to gather information and report back. Lyra met with each one, showed them her power, told them the truth about her bloodline, watched their reactions range from fascination to fury. Alpha Marcus Ironwood from the Eastern Forest tried to challenge her on the spot. She put him down in under a minute, leaving him unconscious but alive. Word spread fast after that. The primal Alpha was real, and she didn't bluff. Alpha Sarah Windcaller from the Southern Plains spent hours talking with Helena, verifying the historical records. When she emerged, her face was pale. It's true, all of it. They've been lying to us for generations. By the 4th day, the settlement had transformed. What had been a forgotten border outpost was now the center of the kingdom's attention. Temporary camps surrounded the hall, housing alphas and their retinues. The population had tripled, and tension hung in the air like smoke. Kael arrived on the 5th day. Lyra was training in the yard when he rode up, still bearing injuries from their fight, but moving well enough. The crowd parted for him, uncertain how to react. Was he still alpha? Was she? Could they both be? He dismounted slowly, approaching her alone. We need to talk, he said. Lyra lowered her practice sword. About? About what happens next. They walked to a quiet corner of the yard, out of earshot, but still visible to the watching crowd. Kael studied her carefully, like he was seeing her for the first time. You've changed, he said, even in 5 days. I stopped pretending to be something I'm not. And what are you? Really? Still figuring that out. Lyra met his eyes. Why are you here, Kael? Because half the kingdom thinks you're a hero and the other half thinks you're an abomination. Because the council is planning something and it's going to be bad. Because... He paused. Because I owe you an explanation. For what? Rejecting me? Trying to kill me? Take your pick. For all of it. He ran a hand through his hair, looking more human than she'd ever seen him. When the bond snapped, when I felt it, I panicked. I've spent my entire life building power, maintaining control. The idea that fate could just assign me a mate, someone I didn't choose, it terrified me. So you humiliated me instead. Yes, and I was wrong. The admission seemed to cost him. I thought strength meant dominance, control. But watching you fight, seeing you refuse to break even when you should have, that's real strength. The kind I've never had. Lyra didn't know what to say. She'd expected anger, posturing, more challenges, not this. What do you want, Kale? To help, if you'll let me. He glanced back at the assembled alphas. They're planning to vote tomorrow on whether to recognize your claim. The council's been working them, spreading doubt, offering deals. It's going to be close. And you can help how? I still have influence. Allies, people who owe me favors. His expression was serious. I can swing the vote in your favor, give you the legitimacy you need. Why would you do that? Because you're right. The system is broken. I've benefited from it my whole life, but that doesn't make it just. He stepped closer, his voice dropping. And because the bond might be rejected, but it's not gone. I can still feel it, can still feel you. And I'd rather stand with you than against you. Lyra studied him, looking for deception. Found only sincerity, which was somehow more unsettling. If you betray me, you'll kill me. I know. I've seen what you can do. A hint of his old smile. I'll take my chances. The vote was held the next morning in the settlement's main square. Every alpha in the kingdom had sent a representative. Some came personally, others sent proxies. The crowd was massive. Thousands of wolves gathered to witness history. Councillor Vera, the original, hostile one, presided over the proceedings with barely concealed rage. We are here to determine the validity of Lyra Vale's claim to the Northern Territories, she announced. The law states that victory in a death challenge transfers all rights and territories to the victor. However, questions have been raised about the legitimacy of this particular challenge. What questions? Alpha Stoneheart stood, her voice carrying across the square. Kale Draven issued the challenge. Lyra Vale accepted. They fought. He yielded. That's the law. The law assumes both parties are acting in good faith, another counselor argued. If one party uses forbidden magic, what magic? Lyra stepped forward, letting power leak into her voice. The crowd quieted instantly. The power of my bloodline? The strength my ancestors were killed for possessing? That's not forbidden. That's inconvenient for your narrative. Murmurs rippled through the assembly. The primal bloodlines are extinct, the counselor insisted. Then what am I? Lyra let her eyes glow, let everyone see the power she carried. A ghost? A lie? Or proof that you've been wrong all along? Helena stepped forward, carrying the ancient records. I have documentation spanning 3 centuries, proof that the council systematically eliminated primal lines to maintain the pack hierarchy. Proof that they've been lying about what Omega truly means. The council members looked panicked now. This wasn't supposed to happen. The vote was supposed to be quick, controlled, a formality before they stripped Lyra's claim and executed her quietly. Instead, the truth was spreading like wildfire. This is preposterous, Councillor Vera sputtered. These documents could be forgeries. They're not! Kael's voice cut through the chaos. He stood, commanding attention just by existing. I've seen Lyra's power firsthand, fought it, lost to it. That's not Omega weakness. That's primal strength. And if you're all too cowardly to acknowledge it, then you're not fit to lead. The crowd erupted. Alphas were arguing, shouting, some supporting Lyra, others demanding her execution. The careful order the council had maintained for centuries was fracturing right in front of them. Councillor Vera raised her hands for silence. Enough! We will vote. All in favor of recognizing Lyra Vale's claim to the Northern Territories. Wait! Alpha Stoneheart stood again. I want to propose an amendment. We're not just voting on territory. We're voting on whether to acknowledge primal bloodlines as valid, whether Omegas with dormant power should be recognized as equals. This is bigger than one claim. That's not the question at hand, Vera protested. It's the only question that matters. Stoneheart looked around the assembly. We can keep pretending the hierarchy is natural, keep crushing anyone who doesn't fit, or we can acknowledge reality and adapt. I know which one I'm choosing. As do I. Kael stepped beside Lyra, a clear statement of alliance. I vote to recognize Lyra Vale's claim and to acknowledge primal bloodlines. One by one, other alphas stood, some hesitant, some defiant, but standing nonetheless. Alpha Windcaller, Alpha Ironwood, nursing his bruises from their fight. Dozens more. Not all of them, not even most, but enough. When the count finished, Lyra had won by 7 votes. Councillor Vera looked like she'd swallowed poison. The vote is recorded. Lyra Vale is recognized as Alpha of the Northern Territories with all rights and responsibilities therein. The crowd erupted again, this time in genuine celebration. People were cheering, crying, embracing. The impossible had happened, and Omega had become Alpha. The hierarchy had been challenged and found wanting. Lyra stood in the center of it all, feeling the weight of what she'd done settling onto her shoulders. Emma hugged her, tears streaming. "You did it. You actually did it." "We did it," Lyra corrected. "All of us." Garrett was grinning despite himself. "Never thought I'd see the day. An Omega Alpha. The council must be losing their minds." They were. Lyra could see them gathered in a tight cluster, clearly planning their next move. This wasn't over, not by a long shot. But for now, for this moment, she'd won. Kyle approached as the crowd began to disperse. "Congratulations. You're officially the most powerful Omega in history." "I'm not Omega anymore." "No, you're something better." He held out his hand. "The Northern Territories are vast. Too vast for one person to manage alone. I'm offering to help. As an advisor, not as Alpha, if you'll have me." Lyra looked at his hand, at this man who'd rejected her, fought her, nearly killed her, who was now offering alliance. She took it. "Don't make me regret this," she said. "I'll try not to." As night fell, Lyra stood on the walls of the settlement hall, looking out over her territory. Her territory. The word still felt foreign. Helena joined her, moving quietly despite her age. "Your mother would be proud," the old woman said. "She'd probably think I was insane." "That too." Helena smiled. "But proud. You've done what she never could. Fought back and won. This is just the beginning. The council won't accept this. They'll find ways to undermine me, to take it back. Let them try. You're not alone anymore. You have allies, power, truth on your side." Helena placed a hand on her shoulder. "And you have something they don't, hope. Every Omega in this kingdom just watched you prove that weakness is a lie. That's worth more than any territory." Lyra thought about Emma's question. What does this mean for the rest of us? She was beginning to understand the answer. This wasn't just about her anymore. It was about everyone who'd been told they were less, who'd been crushed by a system designed to keep them down. Everyone who'd been labeled Omega and taught to accept it. She'd shown them another way, and now she had to make sure it stuck. "Helena," she said quietly, "I want to do something. Something that's never been done before." "Haven't you already done enough impossible things for 1 week?" "One more. I want to create a new territory, not just claim Kael's, create my own. A place where power doesn't determine worth, where Omegas can become whatever they're meant to be." Helena was quiet for a long moment. "That would require the council's approval. They'll never give it. But then I'll take it anyway. The borderlands, the unclaimed territories, nobody wants them because they're too harsh, too dangerous. I'll take them. Build something new there." "You're talking about splitting from the kingdom entirely." "I'm talking about showing there's another way to live, another way to organize. No rigid hierarchy, no crushing the weak. Just fairness. They'll see it as rebellion." "Let them." Lyra turned to face Helena, her eyes glowing softly in the darkness. "I didn't survive all this just to maintain the status quo. I survived to change things, really change them." Helena studied her face, then slowly smiled. "Your grandmother said almost exactly those words, right before they killed her." "I'm not my grandmother." "No. You're stronger, smarter. And you have something she never did, other people willing to stand with you." Helena pulled out a folded map. "The borderlands stretch for hundreds of miles. Harsh territory, yes, but rich in resources if you know where to look, and full of outcasts who jump at the chance for a fresh start." They spent the next hour planning, plotting, imagining a territory built on new principles. It felt impossible, insane, doomed to fail. It felt like hope. When Lyra finally returned to her quarters, exhausted but exhilarated, she found a note slipped under her door. Simple, direct, terrifying. "We know what you're planning. It won't work. We'll make sure of it. This isn't over." No signature, no seal, just threat. Lyra burned it in the candle flame and watched it turn to ash. Let them threaten. Let them plot. She'd faced down Kyle Draven and won. She'd survived her own power trying to burn her alive. She'd proven that everything they believed was wrong. Whatever came next, she'd face it the same way she'd faced everything else, by refusing to break, by being exactly what they tried to prevent her from becoming, by being free, by being exactly what they tried to prevent her from becoming, by being free. The threat note's ashes were still smoking when Garrett burst through the door, weapon drawn. "We have a problem," he said. "Multiple problems, actually." Lyra turned from the window. "How many?" "Council's called an emergency session. They're claiming your vote was illegitimate because half the alphas were coerced by your unnatural display of power. They're moving to overturn the recognition." "They can't do that. The vote was witnessed." "They don't care. They're scared, which makes them dangerous." Garrett moved to the window, scanning the darkness outside. "And that's not the worst part. There's been movement in the camps, armed movement. Someone's preparing for violence." Lyra's stomach dropped. "The council? Maybe. Or rogue alphas who don't want the hierarchy challenged. Could be both." He turned to face her. "Either way, we need to evacuate. Now. Get you somewhere safe until this blows over." "No." "Lyra." "I said no." She moved to her desk, pulling out the maps Helena had given her. "Running just proves I'm afraid. That I don't deserve what I won. I'm staying." "Then you're going to die. They're not playing political games anymore. This is assassination." A knock at the door made them both freeze. Garrett raised his weapon, moving to intercept, but the voice that came through was familiar. "It's Marcus. Open up. Fast." Garrett cracked the door, then opened it fully when he saw Marcus wasn't alone. Hale was with him, along with Alpha Stoneheart and 3 others Lyra recognized from the vote. "What's going on?" Lyra asked. Kale's face was grim. "Coup attempt. The council's making their move tonight. They've got maybe 40 wolves loyal to them. Guards, assassins, a few alphas who voted against you. They're planning to storm the hall, kill you, and claim you died resisting lawful arrest." "Lawful arrest for what?" "Using forbidden magic. Threatening the kingdom's stability. They're making it up as they go." Stoneheart crossed to the maps on Lyra's desk. "We have maybe an hour before they move. Maybe less." "How many do we have?" "Maybe 20 who'll actually fight," Marcus said. "Another 30 who might stand with us if we're winning. Against 40 trained killers, that's not good odds." Lyra studied the faces around her. These people, some who'd fought her, most who'd doubted her, were now risking everything to protect her. "There's another option," she said slowly. "I'm listening," Kyle said. "We don't fight them here. We leave. All of us. Take everyone who's willing and head for the borderlands." She spread out the map Helena had marked. "Unclaimed territory. Harsh enough that nobody wants it. We establish a new settlement there, a new territory." "That's secession," Stoneheart said. "The council will see it as open rebellion. They already see me as rebellion. At least this way we're on our terms, in defensible territory." Lyra looked around the room. "I'm not asking you to follow me. I know what I'm asking, but I'm done playing by their rules, done pretending the system can be fixed from inside when it's designed to crush people like me." Kyle was studying the map. "The Razor Ridge Pass. If we can reach it before they catch us, we can hold it with a fraction of their numbers. The terrain's too rough for a large force." "You're actually considering this?" Marcus looked between them, incredulous. "I'm considering that Lyra's right. The system is broken. Maybe it's time to build something new." Kale met Lyra's eyes. "You asked what I wanted. This. A chance to be part of something that isn't built on crushing the weak." Stoneheart nodded slowly. "My pack's small, but they're loyal. They'll come." One by one, the other alphas agreed. Not all of them. Some clearly thought this was suicide. But enough. More than Lyra had dared hope. "Then we move now," she said. "Wake everyone who'll come. Tell them to pack light and move fast. We have maybe 30 minutes before the council realizes what's happening." The hall erupted into controlled chaos. People grabbing supplies, weapons, anything portable. Emma appeared at Lyra's side, her face pale but determined. "I'm coming with you." "Emma, you don't have to." "Yes, I do. You think I'm staying here? In a settlement that tried to exile you? That watched you almost die and did nothing?" She grabbed Lyra's arm. "You're not the only one who's tired of being treated like nothing. If you're building something new, I want to be part of it." More Omegas appeared behind her, dozens of them, the ones who'd been invisible their entire lives. The the ones who'd watched Lyra fight and seen possibility. "We're coming too," one said. A man named Derek, who'd worked the fields his whole life. "All of us." Lyra felt something break open in her chest. Not the binding this time, something else. The weight of responsibility, yes, but also pride, hope. "Then let's go." They moved through the settlement like shadows, a column of maybe 80 people slipping through back streets and alleys. Lyra led them, using paths Helena had shown her, routes the old woman had mapped decades ago for exactly this kind of emergency. Behind them, they could hear shouting. The council forces had reached the hall and found it empty. "They'll come after us," Garrett said, jogging beside Lyra. "I know, that's why we need to reach the pass before dawn." It was a brutal march. The borderlands weren't called that for nothing. The terrain grew rougher with every mile, the ground turning from packed earth to loose rock to treacherous scree. People stumbled, fell, picked themselves up, and kept going. Because going back meant death. Lyra pushed her power into her legs, into her endurance, feeling the primal strength respond. She could run for days if she had to, but the others couldn't. They stopped twice to rest, brief pauses where people collapsed against rocks and tried to catch their breath. Lyra moved through the group, checking on people, offering encouragement. "This is insane," someone muttered. "We're going to die out here." "Maybe," Lyra said, "but at least we'll die free." Dawn found them approaching the Razor Ridge Pass. Kale had been right. It was a natural fortress. Sheer cliffs on both sides, a narrow path barely wide enough for 3 people abreast. Anyone trying to follow would have to come through that choke point. They could hold it. Maybe. "Set up defensive positions," Kale ordered, falling naturally into tactical command. "Archers on the heights, close fighters in the pass. If they come, we make them bleed for every inch." Helena appeared beside Lyra, looking surprisingly fresh for someone her age. "They're coming. I can feel them, maybe 2 hours behind." "How many?" "All of them. The council's committed everything. This isn't just about you anymore. It's about making an example, showing what happens to those who defy them." Lyra looked back at the people she'd led into the wilderness, exhausted, scared, but still standing, still believing in something better. "Then we'll show them what happens when you underestimate the powerless." The council forces arrived as the sun reached its peak, a column of armed wolves stretching back down the trail. At their head rode Counselor Vera, her face twisted with rage. "Lyra Vale!" her voice echoed off the cliff walls. "You are charged with sedition, use of forbidden magic, and inciting rebellion. Surrender now and face justice, or be destroyed where you stand." Lyra stepped to the edge of the pass, making herself visible. "Justice? You mean execution. You're not here to arrest me. You're here to bury the truth I represent." "You represent nothing but chaos and disorder." "I represent the people you've crushed for centuries, the Omegas you declared worthless, the bloodlines you tried to eliminate." Lyra let her power show, let her eyes glow. "I represent everything you feared, and I'm not surrendering." Vera's face went purple. "Then you'll die with your followers. Attack!" The council forces surged forward, but the pass forced them into a tight column. Exactly as planned, arrows rained down from the heights, Garrett's archers finding targets. Wolves fell, stumbled, created a bottleneck. The ones who made it through the initial barrage met Kyle and the other alphas in brutal close combat. Lyra stood back, watching, waiting, conserving her strength for when it was really needed, because she could feel it coming. The real threat. Vera pushed through her own forces, power radiating from her. She was old, experienced, and absolutely committed to ending this. "You think you're special?" Vera snarled, closing the distance. "You think one Omega with a genetic quirk can change everything? I've killed stronger wolves than you." "Probably," Lyra admitted. "But you've never killed one who had nothing left to lose." Vera attacked, and it was like fighting a hurricane. The counselor was fast, brutal, her decades of experience showing in every strike. Lyra blocked, dodged, gave ground. The power inside her was howling to be released, to burn through her restraint and consume everything. But Helena's warning echoed in her mind. Use too much too fast and it would destroy her. She had to be smart, precise. Vera's fist caught her ribs, the same ribs Kyle had broken. Pain exploded through Lyra's chest, but she used it, channeled it, let it fuel her next move. She dropped low, sweeping Vera's legs. The counselor fell, shocked, and Lyra was on her instantly, not trying to kill, trying to pin, to neutralize. "Yield!" Lyra gasped. "Never!" Vera threw her off with desperate strength. They rolled apart, both breathing hard. Around them, the battle was turning. The council forces were being pushed back, the pass proving too difficult to breach. But Lyra knew this wasn't over. Vera wasn't here to win a battle. She was here to make a point. "You want to know the truth?" Vera said, circling. "We killed your grandmother, your great-grandmother, every primal we found, and we'd do it again. Because your kind threatens everything we've built. You built a prison and called it civilization. We built order, structure. Without it, we'd be animals." Vera's eyes were wild now. "You think you're liberating people? You're condemning them to chaos. Better chaos than slavery." They clashed again, power against power. But Lyra could feel the difference now. Vera's strength was borrowed, maintained through dominance and violence. Lyra's was innate, primal, part of her very being. The counselor was strong, but Lyra was stronger. She caught Vera's next strike, held it, pushed back. The older woman's eyes widened as she felt herself being overpowered. "This isn't possible," Vera whispered. "You keep saying that. When are you going to accept reality?" Lyra threw her, not gently. Vera hit the cliff wall hard enough to crack stone, slumping to the ground. The battle around them had stopped. Council forces and rebels alike staring at the fallen counselor. "It's over," Lyra announced, her voice carrying. "Your leader is defeated. You can keep fighting and die, or you can walk away. Choose." For a long moment, nobody moved. Then, one by one, the council forces began backing away. Some fled outright. Others just stood there, uncertain, their entire worldview shattered. Vera struggled to her feet, blood running from her mouth. "This isn't over. The council is finished," Kyle said, stepping forward. "I'm calling a vote of no confidence, as is my right as a territorial alpha. Stoneheart, you second?" "Seconded," Stoneheart said firmly. Vera looked around at the assembled alphas, seeing the truth in their faces. The council's power had always rested on the alphas accepting their authority. Without that acceptance, they were nothing. "You're making a mistake," Vera said, but her voice was hollow. "Without us, the kingdom will fall into chaos." "Then we'll build something better from the chaos," Lyra said. "Now go. Tell the other counselors what happened here. Tell them the primal bloodlines are back. And tell them we're not asking for permission anymore." Vera stumbled away, supported by the remnants of her force. Lyra watched them go, feeling the weight of what she'd just done settling onto her shoulders. She'd just effectively declared war on the established order. "That could have gone better," Marcus said dryly. "Could have gone worse," Garrett countered. "We're all still alive." Kale approached Lyra, studying her face. "You know they'll be back. With more forces, better planning. This was just the first move." "I know, but by the time they organize, we'll be established, defended, ready." Lyra looked at the pass, at the harsh borderlands beyond. "This is where we make our stand." The next weeks were brutal. They pushed deeper into the borderlands, finding a valley sheltered by mountains, with water and defensible positions. They called it Haven Ridge, not because it was easy or comfortable, but because it was theirs. Building the settlement was hard work. Lyra found herself doing everything from hauling stone to settling disputes to planning defenses. The power inside her helped with the physical labor, but it couldn't solve the human problems. People were scared, uncertain. Some wanted to go back, to try negotiating with the council. Others wanted to push deeper into the wilderness, to hide completely. Lyra had to hold them together through force of will and the promise of something better. More refugees arrived almost daily. Omegas who'd heard the story, who'd learned that one of their own had beaten an alpha and claimed territory. They came with nothing but hope, and Lyra welcomed them all. Within a month, Haven Ridge's population had tripled. Within 2, they'd established farms, built basic housing, created something resembling a community, and word continued to spread. The Omega who became Alpha, the primal bloodline that survived, the new territory where worth wasn't determined by strength alone. It became a story, a legend, a symbol. Helena helped draft the laws for their new society. No rigid hierarchy, no Omega/Beta/Alpha classifications. You contributed what you could, received what you needed, and your voice counted equally in decisions. It was idealistic, probably naive, but it worked. Not perfectly. Nothing ever did. There were fights, disagreements, people who couldn't adapt. But there was also hope, real hope, for the first time in generations. 3 months after the battle at Razor Ridge, a messenger arrived. Not from the council, but from Kael's former territory. The Northern Pack wanted to join them. The council tried to install a new alpha, the messenger explained. Someone loyal to them. The pack rejected him. They remember what you did, what you represent. They want to be part of it. Lyra looked at Kael, who'd been helping organize their defenses. It's your territory. Your decision. Was my territory, he corrected. You won it. But if you're asking my opinion, yes, accept them. The bigger we grow, the harder we are to crush. They accepted, and more came. Other packs, other territories, all fed up with the council's control. Not everyone. Most stayed loyal to the old system. But enough came that Haven Ridge grew into Haven territory, a genuine rival to the council's power. The council tried to stop it, sent armies, assassins, diplomats with poisoned offers. Lyra fought them off, sometimes with violence, sometimes with words, always with the absolute conviction that what they were building mattered. Months became a year. The territory stabilized, grew prosperous. Other regions began adopting their laws, their structure. The rigid hierarchy that had dominated for centuries was cracking. And then, on a cold morning 1 year after the battle at Razor Ridge, a delegation arrived from the capital. Not soldiers, not assassins, counselors. All of them, including Vera. They came under a flag of truce requesting a meeting. Lyra almost refused, but Kael convinced her to hear them out. They met in Haven Ridge's main hall, built from timber and stone by hands that had been told they were worthless. "Why are you here?" Lyra asked, not bothering with pleasantries. Vera looked older, diminished. "Because the kingdom is fracturing. Half the territories have adopted your model. The other half are in chaos, fighting over who gets to maintain the old system. We're on the brink of civil war." "Sounds like a problem you created." "Yes, we did." The admission seemed to cost Vera everything. We were wrong about the primal bloodlines, about the hierarchy, about what makes someone valuable. I was wrong. Lyra studied the counselor's face, looking for deception, found only exhaustion. "What do you want?" "Peace. Unification under a new system, one that incorporates your principles but maintains some structure. The kingdom can't survive complete chaos." "I'm not interested in going back to the capital, if that's what you're suggesting. We're not asking you to." Another counselor stepped forward, younger than Vera. "We're proposing a federation, autonomous territories, each governing themselves, but united for defense and trade, with representatives from each territory forming a council, a real council, with actual representation." "And you'd give up your power, just like that?" "We don't have a choice," Vera said bluntly. "You've proven the old system doesn't work. People are leaving in droves. We either adapt or become irrelevant." Lyra looked around the room at her people, at Emma, who'd become her closest advisor, at Garrett, now captain of their guard, at Helena, who'd lived to see the primal bloodlines acknowledged, at Kael, who'd gone from her greatest enemy to her most trusted ally. "I need to discuss this with my people," she said. "We'll give you an answer in 3 days." The debate lasted all 3 days. Some wanted to reject the offer, to remain completely independent. Others saw value in unity, in having a voice in the larger kingdom. Emma argued passionately for acceptance. "This is what we fought for, not isolation, but equality, a seat at the table." Garrett was more cautious. "They've lied before. They could be lying now." Helena just smiled. "Your grandmother would tell you to trust your instincts." "What do they say?" Lyra's instincts said this was risky, but also necessary. They couldn't hide in the borderlands forever. And the kingdom needed what they'd built, proof that another way was possible. On the 3rd day, she gave her answer. "We'll join your federation, but on our terms. Haven territory remains autonomous, our laws, our structure, our choices. We send representatives to the council, but we're not subject to it. We're partners, not subordinates. Vera nodded. Acceptable. We'll draft the formal agreement. And one more thing. Lyra stepped closer. Every territory in this federation acknowledges primal bloodlines. No more executions, no more suppressions. Anyone with that heritage is protected by law. Done. They signed the agreement a week later in a ceremony attended by alphas from across the kingdom, the Federation of Free Territories, they called it. A new beginning. Lyra stood before the assembled crowds, feeling the weight of everything that had brought them here. The rejection, the fights, the near death, the impossible choices. A year ago, she said, her voice carrying across the square, I was nobody. An omega in a border settlement, invisible and powerless. I was rejected, humiliated, nearly destroyed. But I refused to accept that my worth was determined by someone else's measure. She looked out at the sea of faces. Omegas who'd been told they were nothing. Alphas who'd learned that strength meant more than dominance. Everyone who'd been crushed by a system and found the courage to imagine something better. We've built something here. Not perfect. Nothing ever is. But better. Fairer. A place where your value isn't determined by your birth or your strength, but by who you choose to be. The crowd was silent, listening. The old system told us that hierarchy was natural, that some people were born to rule and others to serve. We've proven that's a lie. We're proving it every day in how we live, how we govern, how we treat each other. She paused, feeling the primal power inside her settle into something stable, permanent. Part of her now, not fighting her anymore. I'm not asking you to forget the past, but I'm asking you to build a different future. One where we're defined by our choices, not our circumstances. Where we lift each other up instead of crushing each other down. Where we're finally actually free. The crowd erupted into cheers. Not everyone. There were still doubters, still people who clung to the old ways. But enough. More than enough. As the celebration continued, Lyra slipped away to the settlement's edge, looking out over the valley they'd built. Helena found her there, as she often did. You did it, the old woman said. Change the world. Just like your grandmother tried to. She died trying. Yes. But her daughter survived. And her daughter's daughter finished what she started. Helena's hand was warm on Lyra's shoulder. You're not the end of the primal bloodlines. You're their new beginning. Lyra thought about her mother, binding her power to keep her safe. About her grandmother, fighting and dying for a better world. About all the women whose names she'd never know, who'd been killed for carrying this strength. I wish they could see this, she said quietly. Maybe they can. Who knows? Helena smiled. Either way, you honored them. Survived when you should have died. Won when you should have lost. Became something impossible. I became myself. Exactly. Kale approached, carrying 2 cups of something that smelled like terrible wine. Figured you'd be hiding. You hate crowds. I hate performative celebration, Lyra corrected, taking a cup. This feels different. It is different. They're not celebrating you. They're celebrating what you made possible. He looked out over the valley. What we made possible. Still feels weird. Get used to it. You're a symbol now. The Omega who beat an Alpha. The primal bloodline that survived. Whether you like it or not, you matter. Lyra sipped the wine. It was as bad as it smelled. The bond, she said suddenly. Do you still feel it? Kyle was quiet for a moment. Yes. Rejected but not gone. Still there under everything. You? Yeah. Is that okay? Lyra considered. The bond had been the catalyst for everything, the rejection that started this whole chain of events. It had nearly destroyed her, but it had also forced her to become something more. It's okay, she said. It doesn't control us anymore. We chose differently. We did. Kale raised his cup. To choosing differently. To choosing differently, Lyra echoed, and they drank the terrible wine together. The celebration continued into the night. Lyra made herself return eventually, accepting congratulations and well wishes with as much grace as she could manage. Emma was dancing with Derek, both of them laughing. Garrett was telling war stories to anyone who'd listen. Marcus was already organizing the first council meeting. Life continued. Work continued. The world kept turning. But it turned differently now, because one Omega had refused to accept her place. had fought back when she should have submitted, had survived when she should have died, had proven that the impossible was just another word for difficult. Late that night, Lyra stood on the walls of Haven Ridge, looking out at the territory she'd built from nothing. Lights flickered in the valley. Homes, lives, futures that wouldn't have existed if she'd accepted Kyle rejection and gone quietly into obscurity. The power inside her pulsed gently, contained but present, a reminder of what she was, what she'd survived, what she'd become. She thought about the girl she'd been a year ago. Invisible, powerless, afraid. That girl had died in the arena when Kyle rejected her. What emerged was something else entirely. Not perfect, not unmarked by the trauma and violence of the journey, but free. Really, genuinely free. And that made all of it, the pain, the fear, the impossible choices, worth it. Helena's voice drifted up from below, teaching a group of young Omegas about their history, about the primal bloodlines, about the women who'd been killed for refusing to be weak, about Lyra's mother, who'd bound her daughter's power to keep her safe. They wouldn't forget now. None of them would. The history that had been buried was being reclaimed, written down, taught to everyone who'd listen. The truth, no longer hidden. Lyra closed her eyes and felt the night wind on her face, felt the solid stone beneath her feet, felt the power humming in her veins, wild but controllable now, felt free. Somewhere in the darkness, a wolf howled. Not a challenge, not a threat, just existence, pure and simple. Lyra smiled and howled back. The sound carried across Haven Ridge, across the borderlands, into the territories beyond. A primal call that hadn't been heard in generations. A declaration that the weak had become strong, that the discarded had become invaluable, that the rejected had become everything they'd tried to prevent her from becoming. And in settlements across the kingdom, in forgotten corners and border outposts, other Omegas heard that call and began to wonder, began to hope, began to believe that maybe, just maybe, they could be more than what they'd been told, that their worth wasn't determined by someone else's measure, that they could choose differently, and in choosing differently, change everything. Lyra Vale, the rejected nobody who became an alpha, stood on the walls of her territory and watched the dawn break over a world she'd helped reshape. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't finished. The council would test them, old prejudices would persist. The work of building something better would never truly end. But for the first time in her life, Lyra looked at the future and saw possibility instead of limits, saw freedom instead of chains, saw herself not as what others decided she should be, but as what she'd chosen to become. And that was worth everything. The sun rose over Haven Ridge, painting the valley in shades of gold and possibility, and Lyra Vale, primal alpha, territory founder, living proof that the impossible was just another challenge to overcome, smiled and got back to work. Because the world didn't change with one victory. It changed with every day you chose to live differently. Every person you showed another way was possible. Every time you refused to break, no matter how hard they tried to crush you. And Lyra had gotten very, very good at refusing to break. The Omega they'd tried to erase had become the Alpha who changed everything. And this was only the beginning.